Okay, and we're live. Good afternoon, everyone, and good evening to the UK. I guess we can start off with an introduction. My name is Prince Petti. I am a person who talks about things, sometimes in a comedic way. And today on the channel, we have a very special guest. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hello, everybody. My name is Kidology. I'm on YouTube and I've been doing YouTube full time for about a year and a bit now. And I talk about everything and anything to do with modern society. So it's a bit of a mix of video essays and some personal videos, but I'm very happy to be here.
All right. Isn't that your intro?
Vaguely, yes.
Okay. So you were born in South Africa, is that correct?
Yes, I was
To
indeed.
the Zulu tribe?
Oh gosh, you've done your research. Yes, indeed. Yes, I
Do
am at least born a Zulu. Yes.
you want to tell me a little bit about that? Do you have recollection of that, or is it like too long ago to remember anything?
No, not at all. Yes, well, I was born into the Zulu tribe. I was born to a Zulu woman, my biological mother. I have an older brother, and we were basically abandoned by our mother and left on the streets, and then picked up by a hospital, and then a home, and then separated. And last I saw him was when I was 10 years old, and I haven't been affiliated with my tribe in any direct way, only indirectly, because I was raised by white South Africans my whole life. So yes, it's been an interesting upbringing.
Oh,
But yes.
so you don't identify with the Zulu tribe or anything like that?
No, not insofar as any commonality in culture, in language, especially. I don't speak Zulu. I never spoke Zulu, never learned, and never tried to learn either. And
You
I
never
just
tried to
expect,
learn?
no, I didn't, no.
Are you you speak Afrikaans, right? And irregular English, of course.
Yes.
So is that something I was listening to you say? I think that you can't communicate with your brother because he doesn't speak English. Is that still so?
Well, as I said, I haven't seen him since I was 10, and he's also quite severely brain damaged. So, well, at least when I was 10 years old, that's what I remember. But yes, I don't know where he is or what he's doing. I know that he was living with Zulu families, people. So, yes, we couldn't communicate or speak at all. But yes, I speak English, and I at least spoke as a teenager Afrikaans and studied Afrikaans at school back in South Africa. But
So
yes, yeah.
Africans is like, is it pretty close to English?
No, not at all.
Not at all.
Dutch. No.
I thought it was
Very
like
much
really,
associated
really.
with Scandinavian and Dutch heritage and ancestry. Yes. Not exactly a beautiful language, but it's an interesting language, an interesting history, especially insofar as the multifaceted nature of white South Africans, who are an amalgamation of people from different settler communities, different colonies, who've sort of all just come together. And yeah, it's interesting. It's very interesting. I think because of that, I would say, somewhat of a different view about quote unquote white people, about race, things like that, just because of my upbringing, inevitably. So, yes.
So you said you were raised by white Africans. Is this European people in who are born in Africa, or is it like how African
Mhm.
Americans are like we were born here, but we have African heritage? Is that what it's like, or is it
Yes,
like
somewhat the
a binary?
same. Yes. Well, I lived with many a white family, actually. So I had a bit of a mixed bag of different white people. I had individuals who were Zimbabwean, and when Zimbabwe was Rhodesia before its liberation, and they were kicked out of Zimbabwe and settled in South Africa. So I lived with them. I lived with white English South Africans who had immigrated from England in sort of the 80s, 90s, in order to live in South Africa for monetary reasons, jobs, opportunities, all that. The economy was starting to open to international business during the sort of slow end of apartheid, or the apartheid era. And I also lived then with real hardcore white South Africans, your stereotypical white South African who is an Afrikaans white South African who is quite a stereotypically tends to be a white supremacist, very much sort of about Afrikaans white blood and ancestry and heritage, does not like Black people, does not like at all any other white people who aren't white Afrikaners, which is interesting to consider just in the apartheid era. But yeah, I lived with sort of all of them, a whole mixed bag. It's very interesting.
Okay. I was going to put like disclaimer, you don't have to put all your business out there, but anything willing or would like to share. But here we are. So
yeah,
I'll
let you know. Don't you worry.
Okay. Any other background info, interests, hobbies, anything we should know about you?
Hobbies. Oh gosh, nobody's asked me that. And
you said you don't go to the club, so I'm like, what do you do?
Well, I go to the gym. I read a lot. I also play tennis. I swim. I go running.
When you say you play tennis, do you go to a court and there are people there and you engage with them?
I'm sorry.
How do you play tennis? Like, do you have a partner you play tennis with, or the other stuff I think you can do alone, but like.
Oh, yes. Well, you join a tennis club and you play depending on the season, sometimes on grass courts. I don't play during grass season. I despise grass tennis courts. I like to play on carpet and hard courts and clay if I'm lucky. But clay tends to be more Mediterranean, and I'm in England, so we tend to play indoors most of the time. But yes, you just join a tennis club and then you play with individuals there, primarily middle-aged, white, middle class English woman. But it's a lot of fun. Yeah.
So you're not antisocial though. You get out, get with the girls.
Oh yes. I spend most of my time, I'd say about 70 to 80% of my time out in the world. I hardly use my phone. Social media is a very new thing for me. I was saying last week to another streamer that I only got my smartphone. I've only had this for when I left, after I left university. It's been about like 2 years now, 2.5 years now. Sort of when I started YouTube, I got a phone and that's how I started. So yes.
Is that an iPhone?
Yes.
Okay, high end. I like it. Super chat.
Go big or go home,
Sorry, I did not know you were live. Wait, is Themis live right now? I didn't know. Oops. But thank you for your relatively short introduction and letting me know that you're social and you get out.
Yes.
So I wanted to ask how you got started on YouTube and how it was initially.
Well, that's a long time ago now. Well, I was in a bit of a rut. I felt very aimless. Life was quite meaningless. I was very lonely. I had no purpose. I'd sort of failed at my venture of going into academia, and I'd been rejected from every job I'd applied to, except one job that I applied to, which was just in order to make money, working at a grocery store. And I was working there and I loved it because for the first time in a long time, I actually was making genuine connections with people in a way that felt very authentic, very much like how I felt back home in South Africa, connecting with people. And it was great, but I wasn't advancing. Management was also just an absolute disaster, horrible. So I felt stuck and I started watching YouTube and I started to think, well, I can maybe do that. That might be something I could do as a hobby mainly. And so I started making videos, just writing essays, writing ideas, planning a channel. And I just started doing that. And yes, it took a long time to get any traction, but I think I started to sort of acclimatize myself to the algorithm a bit better, started to sort of understand, okay, what I need to do, what's people clicking, that sort of thing.
You're not grifting, are you?
Sorry?
You're not grifting, are you?
Isn't everybody a grifter? I mean, isn't that what everybody's doing?
No.
Oh, I mean...
Wait, no, that's not how you're supposed to answer that question. You're supposed to be like,
is there a way to answer this question?
I mean, I understand that you grift a bit to feed the algorithm and such, but
I mean, isn't that what everybody does? I mean, I think that this idea of grifting is rather, it's quite a sanctimonious take, I find, when people call others grifters, because I think we're all on YouTube we're all online to get attention from people. Let's be honest. Like, nobody's here just in order to, do the right Jesus-like thing. We're all here for a reason. So, I mean, I don't really know. I think everybody, to an extent, is, I don't know if grifting is the right word for it. I think we use that a bit too liberally. But I think we're all here to gain an audience, find community, grow a community, grow viewers, subscribers. And if this is our livelihood, to make money. So,
Now, I understand, again, thumbnail like optimization and titling and tags and stuff like that to sort of grift to the algorithm, but I don't think people use it in that way. I think like switching up to make some money or something like that, just to simplify. That's like very directly what my question was. Not like, are you looking for an audience or something like that? So.
Oh, so asking if I do this for money.
I mean, well, you said you do it for money since it's full time, I assume.
Yes,
right?
Yeah, it's my job. This is my job. So yes, obviously, yes.
But specifically, are you pandering to a certain audience for financial gain? Maybe pandering would be a better word than grifting.
Sorry?
Maybe pandering would be a better word than grifting.
Well, yes and no. I mean, I think it depends. I mean, if you look at my channel, my views are very up and down. There's no, there isn't sort of like a steady base. I mean, I lose as many subscribers as I gain sort of every day. And sometimes my videos do really well. Other times they do very badly. So every month my income is very different. I mean, one month I can make $2,000. The next I make $500. It really is very precarious. But yeah, I don't think I have an audience whose identity I can really pinpoint. I mean, for the last few months, my majority audience has been a male audience from the US, but that changes all the time, depending on what I'm talking about. But I think that when you have, for instance, a very clear political perspective, say you're very much on the left and you're a left or bread tuber, you can see with their views and with their subscriber count, they've got a very loyal base. So they sort of know every month how much money is coming in, what subscribers they're going to have coming in, sponsorships, etc. Whereas I personally don't find that same kind of consistency or reassurance from my audience, which is I think, a trade-off for me. I think if I did clarify things a lot more, if I did state that I am on the left or I'm on the right, or had very, I guess, clear-cut takes on things, my opinions change every video, basically. I think it would be a lot easier for me. And I think it would be more in line with our definition of a grift, maybe. But I don't blame anybody for grifting. I mean, I can understand. I mean, this is a tough life, a tough world, a tough gig. You've got to make it somehow, and we've all got our different reasons for doing what we have to do.
Look, if somebody is out here telling these folks what they want to hear to make some money, I'm here for it.
Right.
So you said it started as a hobby, now it's full-time. Which was my next question, but you answered it. So what do you think is the purpose of your channel? Since I had the question on screen, is your strict motivation money at whatever cost? Which I think your answer was no, based on what you just told me. But what's the purpose of your channel, and what's the goal, if there is any, and what do you plan of making of your channel in the future?
I think I find, I guess, the world or modern life very disenchanting and very unfair and very cruel as well. And I think I find YouTube a very effective platform in addressing that and communicating some of my discontentedness with the world and with a lot of where we are going, at least socially and politically. And I don't believe, for instance, that I, in my context, have a lot of power, a lot of social clout as a minority, and just in my context. So I find that this is a far more effective way for me to get my opinions out there. I would say, in terms of the vision or objective for my channel, I really have no idea. I think I'm very much a go with the flow kind of person. I think I do need to have a serious sit down with myself, thinking, okay, what do we want from this? Do we want this to make a profit? And if so, how are we going to make that happen? Do we want to expand into other domains, into other social media platforms, what have you? And I think regrettably, in a way, I'm a very patient person. So I sort of very much go with the flow of things. I'm very, very relaxed. Sort of every day is a siesta for me. So I do think I need to perhaps sit down with, I guess, an expert in social media relations and the creative economy and establish what to do, because I do feel that a lot of my success on YouTube has been a matter of luck more than anything else. Just sort of being in the right place at the right time, saying the right thing at the right time. And it hasn't really been, there hasn't been a lot of foresight into, okay, I'm going to do this in order to then achieve that. So yes, I think this is something that I need to think about a bit more. But at the moment, I am happy. I'm content with just seeing where things go. I think for another year, I'm happy just doing what I'm doing at the moment before thinking, okay, what am I going to do next? Because I am, as I said, quite a patient person and easily content. And right now I am quite content.
Okay. So we don't know what's going on, but we're gonna figure it out.
I mean, that's life. It's a mystery for all of us.
That's true. Who is your audience? And I'm asking this as two questions. Number one, who are you speaking to? As in, who do you have in mind when making videos? And number two, if you know it, who actually watches you? I think you said your demographics are like largely American, maybe gender, race, anything like that, if you know it. And you're comfortable sharing.
Yeah, I don't know racially at all. I know in terms of gender, typically majority male, but it is very close. It's sort of like 60%, 40%. So yeah, it's America, Germany, UK predominantly. So yes. I'm in terms of who I make content for, I think it's primarily for millennials and Gen Z. I think Gen Z who have sort of, I guess, moved off of TikTok a little bit and are sort of venturing into longer form content, I suppose. Gen Z who are entering the workplace, who are starting to realize that the world actually is not a very nice place, that life is difficult and hard, and it's not as clear cut as I guess it's made out to be, at least on social media. So yes, I have a generic idea of an audience in mind, but nothing terribly concrete. I'm sort of just making it for your everyman.
Okay. The millennial, the young fellows, the kiddos.
Yes.
Is that what they're called? The
Boomers are
kiddos?
welcome. Sorry.
Is that what they're called? The kiddos over on your channel? The kiddos?
Oh, I call them a number of names: brethren, kidologists, gobblegannets.
Okay. The brethren are in the chat. They are loud. I'm not going to read the comments. So let's get into some stuff. Let's talk about first your hair, because the last time we spoke, you said that you wear weave or wig. I'm not sure if this is true now, but you said out of insecurity, as well as noticing, or I guess in part because of noticing that people begin to treat you better when you wear it.
Yes.
Does that still hold true?
Yes, precisely. Yes, definitely. I wear my weave or wig. It's insecurity, definitely, about my natural hair and the different treatment that I get when I have a weave or wig relative to when I have my natural hair. And I definitely found that as I've grown up, my looks have become far more important, at least insofar as my success in the world. As a child, you sort of just have this very brilliant naivete about you. Nothing really matters. Everybody loves you, or everybody just endears you. But as an adult, suddenly people just don't like you before you even had a chance to open your mouth. And I found that a lot, especially when I was interviewing for jobs and getting rejected. And as soon as I went to a beautician and I said, right, put makeup on and tell me what else I can do. And she said, right, do your hair. I got a job. So, I think just from that sort of in my mind cemented something of, oh, right, I need to do something. I need to do this in order to make it in my context. I'm not saying that this is necessarily a universal, but at least where I am, it definitely has helped me, especially, I would say, mentally. It's given me a lot more confidence when I go out. Yeah.
It's a little more universal than you think. Well, it's over here in America at least too. I know that typically Black women are perceived better when they have straight hair. Do you think this is indicative of a kind of a white leaning beauty standard when it comes to hair?
Yes, I would say so. I'd say that in especially European countries, or in, I guess you could say, advanced economies, which are very Eurocentric, are very much influenced by the North Americas and Northern Europe, where the majority population is white. I think inevitably you're going to be in a context where everybody is, where the majority is obviously going to be advertised, be promoted, be seen as the standard, be seen as the norm and what everybody should aspire to. And I definitely feel that, at least when I was in South Africa, as I grew up, I started to see, right, okay, yes, weaves are a thing now, because as a child, it's, it doesn't matter. Everything's brilliant as a child. But then as you grow up, you start to realize, oh, actually, now in South Africa, where the white norm and standard from apartheid still most definitely dominates, those sort of views about the aspiring towards a sort of white aesthetic, very broadly speaking, was important. And so, yes, I definitely think, depending on your context, that most definitely does feature. Yes.
Yeah, I was going to ask that about South Africa too, because I know even in African nations, my understanding is that even in African nations, there's still kind of like a white beauty standard where, to the point where some people may bleach their skin, like you said, wearing weave or wig and considering like themselves ugly or less attractive than, I guess, white Africans. So that is unfortunate. But
Yeah.
that's also interesting because I think in one of your recent videos, you are reading comments from the incel community where they are dragging you for the weave and wig. And I think that stereotype kind of exists for Black women, with weave being like maybe ghetto or ratchet or unattractive, something like that. If you're familiar with those words, little American slander over here. But in most cases, Black women tend to be treated better. I think empirically. I think citation needed. Citation needed. But are you ever going to give us a natural hair video?
Who knows? Perhaps. I mean, since being on YouTube, ironically, my self-confidence has increased in ways that I could never imagine. When I sort of was forced against my will to move to the UK as a teenager, my self-confidence was just destroyed. I had no confidence at all. And I think that was one of the reasons why I started YouTube as well, just to feel a bit more whole again. So who knows, maybe in the future I will actually don my real hair. So
Okay,
yeah,
we
who knows?
gotta set that up concretely at some point. That's what we gotta do. We gotta do
I think it will come with time. I think it's a matter of just natural progression toward that point, potentially. Who knows?
So some people in the comments are talking about some laws we have against hair discrimination in the US. And there's one important one, I think, that's called, well, there are a bunch of anti-discrimination laws, but specifically the Crown Act, which I forget what it stands for, but it is basically people with ambiguously Black hair styles or textures are discriminated against in the workplace empirically, and maybe disciplined or sent home, or so extreme as to be fired. And now this Crown Act is supposed to be a law saying that employers can no longer discriminate against you, fire you, or something like that off the basis of your hair style or texture, which technically is ambiguous about what race it protects, but it's pretty much designed for Black people. Are you familiar with the natural hair movement at all?
Yes, I've heard of it, vaguely. Yes, I know what it is, vaguely. I do see references to it. I often, well, not often, I exaggerate. I sometimes get comments about needing to embrace it. I do get a bit of flack every now and again about my hair, my fake hair. So yes.
That's interesting. The natural hair movement, I think, is good to encourage Black women to wear your hair, yes, queen and afro, all that stuff. But do you think it's fair to request Black women wear their natural hair when there are real life social consequences, and in the US at least financial consequences? We just talked about the Crown Act, like being disciplined or fired, maybe losing your income or ability to feed yourself and maybe your children. So number one, a two-part question: do you think the natural hair movement is, and similar movements like it, are good? And number two, do you think it's fair to ask someone to die on this hill, I guess, to secure a future where we aren't penalized for wearing it, kind of like a
Well,
hair revolution?
well, I think in answer to your first question, I'd say yes, I think it's a good thing. I think it's very good for just as an alternative to what we do see, and that it helps a lot of people. It may be exactly what a lot of individuals need in order to feel beautiful, in order to feel attractive, in order to feel just in touch with their very being and who they are. And for them, I say, yes, go for it. That's exactly what the movement ought to be there for, to offer an alternative for people to choose if they want to be a part of it and join it and find meaning through it. I think in answer to your second question, whether I think you said, should Black women be obliged or obligated to abide by this movement and its tenets, or should we go natural?
Oblige is a strong word, but is it
Yeah.
fair to request Black women do this for the sake of, yes, a future where hopefully
Okay.
it's not as stigmatized?
Is it fair? I'd say no. No, I don't think so, because I don't think I'm a very staunch individualist. So I believe in the individual. I don't believe in groups. I don't believe in tribes in terms of determining how you should think for yourself. So no, I don't think that it is a fair request or ask. No, I don't believe in that. I would say this is a controversial thing, but I do say this. It's actually not something that I say. It's something that a political writer who I admire says about her Jewish ancestry. But I don't love a group of people. I don't love Black people. I love my friends and the people who I know individually, irrespective of what they are collectively. So yes, I don't think that is something that is fair to ask of anyone.
Okay, I agree with you there. I don't think that's controversial. I might agree with the other side more if it weren't. Typically, it's not just, hey, wear your natural hair. It's like a demonization of weave or wig or any deviation from that style, like you said, you've experienced. So that is my thoughts on that. Also, just a note, I do have a link in the chat for anyone who's watching live. You may come up to ask questions if you would like to. Ask Kidology or I some questions. You are welcome to do that in burst. Please don't all come up at one time, please. So you described the time in your life when you walked past a mirror, or maybe several times, don't remember, and you were shocked to see a Black woman in the reflection. And you said this is because you envision yourself as a white woman, not like as a delusion, as in I'm white. I don't identify with you Black people. But in your mind's eye, for example, like when you fantasize about your future, or you got in your head thinking of a future with a nice big house and a husband or wife, 2 kids and a dog and a cat who don't get along but they love each other, and 2 cars, one sportsy and one's a minivan, or maybe like a SUV so you can bus the kids around, right? All that good stuff that you envision in your head, not mine. And the woman that you see in your mind is white. In your thoughts, you're a white woman. So 2 questions regarding this. Number 1, well, would you like to elaborate on it a little more before we continue? And number 2, do you still hold these type of feelings?
Yeah, I would say I do. I think, yes. Yeah, I still do when I walk across the mirror, at least. Yeah, still sometimes get a bit taken aback, because in my mind, I've always just encountered and been surrounded by vast majority white population. So yes, it does. It still does definitely affect me. Yeah, I'd say it does. Yes.
And would you like to elaborate or clarify anything that I just said regarding seeing yourself as a white woman in your head? I'm trying not to say it in a way that sounds crazy.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think if you just consider my very personal, very, very off the beaten track upbringing, right, in terms of living with a whole variety of white people in South Africa, of all places, just after the end of apartheid, where everything was still very fresh, where I was raised by white people who openly would say to me that they've rescued me, that I am white, that this is sort of the new South Africa, and I'm an example of everything that South Africa is going to be, you know, sort of white and black, just fused together into one. I had, and still to this day have, a considerable identity crisis, which I don't ever think will be resolved in any meaningful way, at least according to how society works. And I also don't live in South Africa anymore. I live in the UK, and here it's, again, just like South Africa, well, just the opposite. Vast majority white population who dominates the conversation and dominate politics and life and culture and everything. And I'm a minority. I accept that, you know, that is the fate of all minorities. But it's, I think, yes, as well, I also interact predominantly, if not exclusively, most days with white individuals. And that is just how I live and experience life. And I mean, you can hear from my accent how I speak. I get a lot of flack also for my accent and how I speak, my mannerisms, etc., all those sorts of things, those fun things. And I think I don't want to sort of be all woe is me, but it does sadden me because I am very disconnected with myself and an identity, which is why I sort of fall very much into the ideas of being apolitical and being a lot more, I would say, tolerant and understanding of the other side, I guess. And also, I think inevitably when I encounter myself visually in a mirror, it is a bit of a shock every now and again. And yeah, I think our culture and who we are surrounded by and what we believe, what we read, what we experience, all of that comes together and sort of makes us. And for most people in the world, the things that all come together sort of have a story, a chronological story and an understanding and a trajectory, which is often accompanied by a homogenous culture and people and family. And I've never had that. I've never had a family. I've never had a culture that identifies with me or that I identify with. I mean, the Zulu tribe, for instance, treated me horrendously. And in response, I didn't learn Zulu, and I tried to distance myself as much as I could from the Zulus because they didn't like me, because I was associating with white people, and because my biological mother was a whore. So I was inevitably shunned because of all of that. So I think it makes sense when you think about it like that, as opposed to just a standalone statement of when I look in a mirror, I get shocked that I see a white person. So I think we need to consider all of these sort of things with the very particular context around them, as opposed to just labeling me, as I often get, somebody who is internally racist. You know, I'm not. I most definitely am not. And I think that's just a very easy way for people to try to understand or try to pretend like they understand other people and the world. But I don't think we can really ever understand people and the world. Nothing is that simple. Yeah.
Would you consider any part of that view of yourself a form of self-hate?
No, not at all.
Okay.
I think it's an identity crisis, but I don't think it's going to be solved. And like any crisis, I think it takes time, it takes patience, it takes understanding, it takes empathy above all else. And I think in my life, I haven't been shown a lot of empathy. I think, ironically, the most empathy I've been shown in my life has really been on YouTube. It's also the place where I guess the most lack of, but I think it's important to give people the time, the space, and the context, which I think is severely lacking, especially contemporarily and in our current political conversations and just understanding of other people. I think all we have is empathy and each other, and we need to put that at the forefront again.
Okay. May I ask, has there ever been a time when you realized, like actually had the realization that you are Black? For example, you described, I think, a time where you were sitting at the dinner table with a group of white Africans, and the maid or whoever did not serve you, and
Yeah.
after initially thinking that they ran out of food and were going to get some, you realized that it was because of your skin color. Like, has there ever been a realization at any point that you're not a white African?
Yes. And I think the ones that are in my mind, at least, are the ones that are typically negative, such as I was remembering a few days ago at boarding school. When I just got to boarding school, the older Black girls realized after a few weeks that I didn't speak Zulu, and that caused a problem. And they cornered me one day and all started simultaneously talking, about 16 of them talking and getting increasingly louder, speaking to me in Zulu, knowing I couldn't understand. And I was just blocked in this corner and I couldn't leave. I couldn't understand what they were saying. I was getting increasingly, I wouldn't say upset, but angry. I'm not sure if angry, just very disillusioned, I think. I think I was very, one thing that I had been taught from my Afrikaans foster family was to just always be very aloof about things, never show your emotions, just pretend like it doesn't bother you. But I mean, it most definitely did. But I do remember that. And I definitely remember often getting comments about my biological mother because she was a prostitute, basically. And so a lot of comments about that, about not having a culture, not being cultured, not being Black, predominantly from Black people, about not being Black in a negative sense. I'd say it's ironic because the white people in my life would say, oh, you're not Black, but they would say it as if it was something I should be proud of, that, oh, you're not Black, you're one of us. But when Black people would say it, it came off as, you're not Black, like you're not a part of us. We don't want you because you are just far gone, like you're just a lost cause. So yeah, I've had a very interesting attachment to Blackness and whiteness as well. But yeah, I think in order to keep my sanity, this is very hard for me, but this is also a reason why I make sure that I see people as individuals and not as groups. Because if I saw a Black person as a Black person and not as, I don't know, Mpatontle, say, who lives in Gauteng with her mother, who is trying to get her married to her 8th cousin, and she's not enjoying that, and she's ranting to me and being all passionate and hearted, and I'm seeing how much of an individual she is, then I could really start seeing all Black people as the same and seeing all Black people as against me and not liking me. And that's why it's difficult, but I always try to see people as individuals. And I think I ask the same, but I think it's difficult because people do, as humans, we just associate in groups, in tribes, through boundaries and collectives, and it's us against them. And I personally don't think we're going to get anywhere because families are changing in modern societies. Everything is changing very quickly. And I think we need to start moving along with it rather than trying to resist it. But I think the way we start is by seeing people as parts of a whole, as opposed to sort of the parts that make up the whole. So yeah. I think I could be very hateful, I think. And I think the same applies to, say, incels, who see woman as woman, not as individual parts of individual women who have their own individual shit going on, their own history, their own understanding, their own metamorphosis in this world. And I think that's the important distinction we need to all make in order to just live.
Oh, don't worry. We're going to get to incels today. Don't worry about that. We are going to get to incels. My last thing regarding race would be two things, which you kind of just answered, but I'll ask anyway. Did having this type of experience with Black Africans where it felt like you were ostracized, to now a point even where you kind of dissociate from your body, I assume probably you have had the tragic Black person trope of being called Oreo for being like different.
Yes.
Did you form, because you're an adult now, and I think you've just told me your opinion now, but as a child or maybe teenager, did you form negative opinion around Black Africans after dealing with stuff like this?
Yes, definitely. Yes, most definitely. And I think especially when I lived with a whole lot of different white families. So it was a different bag of people. At one point, I was living in a mansion, basically, like a huge mansion with, a maid, gardener, a man who cleaned the pool. And the next, I was living with white people, poor white people, in a small apartment where all of us shared one room together, and one individual was dying of cancer. And yeah, it was a whole different thing. But at least when I was living with the rich the rich white South Africans, I definitely started to play into that a lot. And I definitely thought that I was better than Black people. I thought that I was entitled to being served by our maid. And I didn't understand why she wouldn't serve me, or why she thought that she could talk to me before I'd spoken to her. It was yeah. I mean, I definitely had my horrible prejudiced bratty moments. And I'm sure inevitably at points in my life I will be a brat again, who knows. But yeah, I mean, it's I wouldn't say that I'm in any way proud of like getting through my childhood. I definitely had my moments that, on reflection, I'm not proud of at all. But yeah.
I see some questions in the comments that I'm going to save for the end of this segment. And then there's someone in the back who I think wanted to ask you something as well. But that's how I will end that. So I will bring this person up.
Okay.
Miss Yasmin, you had a question for Kidology or I?
Hey, so Kidology, my name is Yasmin. I'm trans. I have just two questions for you.
Yes.
I heard you say that you don't believe in tribalism and you see most Black people as against you. Is the reason why you don't like the collective of Black people because you had bad experiences with Black people your entire life? Or most of your life?
Well, I would say yes, most of my experiences with Black people as a collective have been negative. But I would say that I think that also any kind of collective, even when I, as a child, was a bratty, prejudiced little rich white/black girl, I mean, that's not a good collective to be a part of either. So
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. So if that was a reason why you don't identify with the collective of Black people, and you also talk about how you had bad experiences with white people, such as them not hiring you for jobs because of your hair or your skin color, or you having not being served at a dinner table in South Africa because you weren't white. Why did you choose to identify with a white woman instead of finding your individuality as a Black woman?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that's where my identity crisis comes in, because I think it's very hard just emotively and just within me to find even an identity, which is why I think when I look in the mirror sometimes I get a bit of a shock, because I really don't know what I am. And I don't think it's as easy as just changing my outer appearance. It can make things a little easier, or make it seem a bit more tolerable for me and for others, but I think it's very complex internally. It's a whole different experience, especially psychologically. So I think that is something that I think with time, patience, I am going to have to just confront and just deal with. I don't know how or how that's going to look, but yes, I mean, I think that is a difficult thing, and it is something that I can't really answer because I don't really know exactly. I think it's all very difficult for all of us, and I just have to look into the abyss, really.
Okay, that's all I had to ask you. And I think you're a beautiful woman. I'm not here to bash you, but I think you'll find yourself.
Thank you so much, Yasmin. It's lovely to speak with you. Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Period. And they are complimenting you in the comments, saying all types of beautiful, gorgeous, all throughout. Just know my audience ain't never gave me this same type of attention or anything like that, so I am jealous. But yeah, I think that was a good question, and I wanted to go through some more from the comments.
Yes.
Thank you, Yasmin, by the way.
Yes, thank you very much. That was a very, very good question. Gives me a lot to think about.
So let's see. Ooh, those are mean comments.
Oh, it's fine.
Here's what I found interesting. Although I love her channel, I find this particular point saddening. She has the intelligence to dive deep into alien culture like Incels, yet doesn't seem to grasp the nuance of race. I don't know what that was in response to, but I believe it was during our discussion about why you don't identify, I guess, with the collective of Black people. If you'd like to respond to it, you can.
Yes. I think the modern incel, this is a very recent phenomena. And by research, we can see that even researchers who are typically very biased when they go into looking at incels don't know what's going on or what they're talking about. It's a very niche culture that is also very new as well. And I think that race cannot be compared to inceldom or that sort of world, because race is very historical. It's got a very, very complex, difficult, long history that continues to this day. People have been researching it. I mean, there's research coming out on race every single day. Also, a lot of it biased with a political agenda on all different sides, depending on where you are and what context. So I don't think they are comparable at all. I can't just go into sort of a forum where individuals are talking about race and, figure out the nuances of race. Like that's a whole history. And it's also something that really personally affects me. And I think also affects the majority of the world in some shape or form. Whereas Inceldom, not so much. It's a very small insular community. It's also a very diverse community. Incels, the majority of incels in Europe, in Northern Europe, are actually from ethnic minority groups, as opposed to being your stereotypical white incel, middle-class posh boy. So it's a whole thing that we really don't know a lot about. So I don't think that's a fair comparison or a right one, because this phenomena of the modern incel is a very, very new thing as we see it today. Whereas race, completely different history, understanding, rhetoric, discourse, individuals involved, very different.
Okay, thank you. Speaking of race, someone said I can understand someone who was adopted having an identity crisis. You made a video on transracial adoption in which it seemed like you had negative views of that. Would that be due to kind of your experience that you've described today?
Yes. I mean, I think, again, with my adoption experience, it is different to the norm of adoption, because I was actually fostered, then adopted, then fostered again. So my adoption wasn't like sort of I was fostered, then adopted, and that was my life. I definitely, because of that being adopted and then fostered again, after everything went to smithereens, that definitely cemented an identity crisis and not knowing who I am, whether anybody could ever love me. So yes, I think that's sort of definitely feeling sort of like thrown to the next person, to the next thing, just like sort of thrown about, definitely has cemented an identity crisis within me. And yes. So I think I have a bit of an ambivalent relationship to transracial adoption, not with my specific case, because mine was very abnormal. But I think in general, I do think that as, for instance, women in modern society are waiting longer to settle down, and as people in general, men and women and all people are waiting longer to actually start families, that I think modern societies are going to have to start thinking about really appreciating how the modern family is going to have to really change. And I think adoption is going to feature a lot more in that. I think with that, and also with the number of wars and displacement, especially due to climate change, that is going to inevitably increase during the century, individuals, and especially children who don't have families, are going to need somewhere to go. And in most modern societies now, they aren't what there were orphanages. And so I think adoption and transracial adoption is going to become more common. And I think governments need to step it up in terms of making it more accessible. And I think with that, there are a lot of challenges, especially insofar as forming connections cross-culturally between a family or parents and their transracially adopted child, a lot more effort in terms of creating that sort of primal bond, which is, at least in studies, agreed to be lacking, or at least is not there when it comes to adopted children, especially transracially adopted children. Mothers have to work a lot harder. Adopted mothers have to work a lot harder in forming a connection with their children. And I think just with childhood being a lot more valued as well, and sort of a lot more sacred, sort of the quality of childhood is going to become far more important. And so I do think that there is a place for transracial adoption in the future, but I think that society needs to be on board, whereas I don't think now society is on board. And so it makes things very difficult and very challenging for transracially adopted children. And their parents. But yes, I think we do need to rethink family structures as opposed to sort of this obsession that we see now with natural birth, and at least this idea of leftover woman and this crisis of women not having children in their fruitful years and all that nonsense. I think we just need to be a bit more creative and imaginative about society and people and forming families. And so I do think transracial adoption is going to become more, or at least ought to become more accessible to modern families just in the future. And I think that that could be a good thing, just for us actually appreciating each other beyond our tribes and our groups. But it'll be tricky and a long road, a long journey, rather.
Despite identity crisis aside, do you ultimately think you turned out as a well-adjusted person, even though you were, I guess, transracial adoption?
No, not at all. No. No, I don't think so. No. No. I think, I have I have problems. I find it difficult to connect to people. I'm on, everybody's on antidepressants. I'm on antipsychotic medication. I've had very low moments. I think because I'm in a good place in my life at the moment, at least. I'm content. Things are going well. And I think I'm in a good place. And that definitely reflects itself insofar as at least how I present myself and how I feel. I do a lot of exercise. I eat well. I have the means to feel secure in my life. Of course, not everything's perfect. I'm a very lonely person. I spend Christmas alone, wallowing. So, I think I'm also prone to self-sabotage as well. I'm not very good at communicating, I think, when it comes to virtual communication, at least with people. I guess you could call me a serial ghoster. But I think I find it difficult to really connect with people in a sort of very profound way. So I'd say, I've got a lot to work on as a human being, a lot to reckon with, and a lot to really confront with myself. And it will happen. It will take time, maybe a lifetime, but it is something that I'm determined to at least try, even though there's no clear end in sight, and likely never will be. But I think I don't think there's such a thing as a good person or somebody who's like, well-rounded or whatever. We've all got our issues. We've all got our skeletons, and I think we should just dance with our skeletons. Try to. So.
I don't know. I went to a therapist, and like one of the first questions she asked is on every session is, do you have any suicidal ideation, any homicidal ideation, stuff like that? Are you depressed or anything? And I was like, yeah, I'm depressed, but isn't everybody these days? And she was like, no. And I was like, oh, I thought we were all in this together. But okay, you said you're on antipsychotics or antidepressants, or you just said people generally are on
both.
You're on both, or people generally are on both?
No, I'm on both.
Okay, well, medication and stuff aside, you don't think you're well adjusted. Do you think this is specifically related to the transracial adoption, though?
I think this is a lot of things. It's a lot of things in life. A lot of things have not, it's, there've been a lot of things. I think particularly not feeling loved, not having a family, feeling quite lost, the identity crisis, all of that. yeah. Things I don't really want to go into, but typical things that happen, regrettably, to women, most women in this world. So yeah, I think it's a lot of things that sort of just come together in a bowl and just cause a lot of issues. But yeah, I think at the same time, I think I've just found it quite comforting to just realize that life is just, it's absolutely absurd. It's bizarre. And sometimes I just have to laugh at it because there's just really nothing else you can really do. I mean, I'm just being thrust around left, right, and center. I think we all are. And I just can't take it too seriously, I think. And it's when I do have those moments where I take it too seriously that things start to crumble and go wrong. I think as long as you see this as a bit of a peculiar Greek comedy, I think that helps to grin and bear it, or to just laugh your way off the stage, because otherwise it's too much.
Oh yeah, me and my friends, we don't call ourselves depressed or anxious. We just say quirky. We're all just quirky, quirky fellows. LB asked, have you spoke with a therapist about this? I think this specifically was about seeing yourself as a white woman. That's when she sent it. But I would extend it to just generally, have you spoken with a therapist about anything? She says, not being facetious, genuinely, I think it can be a benefit, maybe a mixed race or Asian therapist, somebody that's not Black or white.
Yes, I do see a therapist. I've been seeing the same therapist for, oh gosh, how long have I been seeing this therapist for? About 4 years or so. And she is a white woman. In my area, that's 100% of therapists are white women.
It is what it is.
Sorry?
It is what it is.
Yes, indeed it is. So yes, I mean, we have a very long relationship. It's been up and down with us, but it's very much one based on honesty. And I think it's a learning experience for both of us. I couldn't imagine seeing another therapist now, because we are just so acclimatized to each other and used to each other.
Are y'all trauma bonded?
I don't think so. No, okay. I think we just we have a very good working relationship. She's I mean, yeah, she's seen a lot of my life, sort of parts of my life when, I mean, for like a year, I wouldn't speak to anybody except her. And so I'd go like, a whole week, no communication with anyone except her. So, we've seen a lot together. So yes, I think at some point I will have to move on. And I think then I'll look for probably a therapist who's more well-adjusted to, I guess, maybe my transracial needs. At this point, however, I think I'm okay. I think I'm looking for a therapist who, at least my therapist, I find that she's very good at keeping me on track with just the important things: taking medication, doing exercise, eating food. She's very good at helping me to just do the everyday things, which I think are often taken for granted, but which, at least at other points in my life, I did not have the time to even consider, and did not perceive as relevant. And she's helped me a lot insofar as doing that. So yes.
Do you think you've progressed through therapy, like advanced forward and made progress, or do you feel it's stagnant? When you say it's been 4 years, I understand that therapy is not just you go in and finish after a month or so, but do you feel stagnated a bit?
At times, yes, I think at times I do. But like I said, it's sometimes a plus, but also sometimes a negative. I'm very patient, so I am willing to sort of wait it out and see if things get better. And typically they do with therapy. So yes, I mean, even now when I have a sort of crisis or I'm worried about something or I'm feeling very low, such as, for instance, during Christmas, it's always the time when I feel terrible. And I was feeling very low and I couldn't imagine going to anybody else or talking to anybody else but my therapist. So that must mean something. So yes, I don't know. I think it depends on the person, but I think inevitably at some point I am going to have to move on with life, move on from my therapist. Yeah. It definitely it's something that we will, I'm sure, work toward.
Does she? Oh yeah, I was gonna ask. Does she know? Is it gonna be like you disappear one day? She gonna be like,
Oh no, we talk about it frequently. We always review how things are going, and I'll say, I'm not feeling that this is going all too well at the moment, and then we'll talk about it. And we sometimes cut sessions or have more sessions, depending. Depending on life and what it throws at me. But yes. So it's sort of, it really depends. Sometimes, sometimes I only see her once a month. Sometimes I see her twice a week. So yes, it really depends on life, up and down. But yeah.
Okay. And I also see other questions in the comments. Y'all can come up and ask your questions if you would like, but I'm probably not going to go through every single question in the comments unless we have time to later. The link is pinned if you guys would like to join, and I'm going to kind of wrap up so that we can get into whether or not incels are racist, which they are. But okay, Ann asked, is therapy beneficial for people that don't have too many severe issues? Seems like talking out issues are the solutions given for improvement, or the solutions given for improvement. I think he was trying to say.
Yes, I definitely think so. I think in this day and age, it's very important because we live in a very, very weird time where we're living in cities, we're living in urban areas, we're living a lot closer to each other. We're constantly connected through our phones and social media, but we are also incredibly disconnected from each other. And we feel increasingly alienated from everyone, from our work, from life, and from ourselves. And I think that sadly, governments aren't really doing anything in order to address this. They just sort of fund pharmaceuticals in order to make medication to make us feel a little bit better. But that isn't a solution really at all. And so I think the best alternative is making therapy accessible to people, because I think when you're speaking to somebody and when that somebody is also somebody who isn't invested in your life beyond that of making a living and practicing their profession, I think it's a lot easier to actually be very vulnerable and open with them in ways that we otherwise would not be with those whom we love, within our communities where certain standards and ethical expectations are expected, where we really do have to conform to frameworks that are set in stone most of the time. And so I think therapy is very helpful in just having a space and an environment where you can actually be very open about the human condition. Because I think there are things where people don't have like a severe illness. So I read a comment in one of my comment sections a few days ago where somebody said that they had a very traumatic experience in which they went on a date with someone and they suddenly had a stomach ache, and they were so embarrassed by this and by the fact that they were having a stomach ache all through this date that it's actually just really traumatized them from actually going on dates with anyone ever again. And they haven't gone on dates since because they're just so disconnected from their bodily functions and any mishaps that can happen. And I think having a therapist to talk through that with, to actually talk about something seemingly as mundane as, I am really disgusted or disconnected with myself because, I'm a human, I have diarrhea and it happened at a really inconvenient time. And I just have issues surrounding this, and it's really, traumatized me. I think a therapist is somebody who's actually going to listen to you, who's actually going to engage with you meaningfully. Whereas I think sometimes if you tell your friends that, they're just going to laugh at you or just not get it really. So, I think it's important. And I do think that therapy needs to become more accessible as opposed to being a luxury. Because right now it is a luxury for people. If you can afford it, or you're willing to make sacrifices financially, then therapy is accessible. But I think right now, the people who most need therapy, who are in most need of therapy rather, are the ones who regrettably can't afford it and can't access it. So it's difficult. It is difficult, but I do think we need to move to a point where therapy is normalized and it's not seen as this upper middle class luxury. Yeah.
Okay. I like that. I'll put a bow on it by saying I also agree. Therapy is beneficial when you don't have severe issues, even. It can definitely help you define your beliefs and your values, build your self-esteem, give you some coping mechanisms in case you ever do experience anything. And of course, improve your social and community functioning. So I recommend. Are you for free therapy?
Free therapy?
Yes. I don't know. Government funded free therapy.
Yes, but I do think that it can't just be something that is then outsourced to private companies. I mean, we've all heard of the scandals of BetterHelp, I believe. And yes, so yes, I think there's really something that needs to change. I think in order to make it accessible, we need to not lose the qualitative nature of therapy. And I, for instance, have a very, very good relationship with my therapist, but I do because she has only a certain number of patients, clients. And so she's able to reconcile the quantity with quality very well and very meaningfully. Whereas I think if it becomes sort of open season for all, it can become a matter of get as many clients as possible, and then it really becomes something that goes virtual more so than in person. I think in-person therapy is very important. I remember during the height of the pandemic, during lockdowns, I couldn't see my therapist face to face in her house where I see her, and seeing her over a monitor on a screen it didn't work at all. I think actually being with a person, with an actual human being, very vulnerable, very much exposed to them, with, you as a fully grown, flesh, blood, pooped individual, all of you in a room with somebody and actually having to be completely vulnerable and open, that helps a lot. And that's very important. So I think there's a way of doing it. I don't think the way to do it is to just sort of make it therapy is free for everybody, and then it all go online and have all these companies sort of taking over and trying to make as much money as possible. I think we need to appreciate and sanctify the quality of therapy as a practice. So yeah.
Can't you have quality therapy online? If something like this may reduce the cost, right? You don't have to rent an office space. You don't have to. It's more feasible for people to meet up with you since it's online and more easily accessible. Wouldn't something like that be good? I understand that you like personal connection in person, but not everything is. These kids on those damn phones need to get out and talk to each other.
Yeah, I'm not saying that. I mean, I think for adults as well, I think for everybody, I think in-person therapy is the most effective means of communicating. I think in-person everything. So yes, I don't think you can do it online, at least not all the time. I think especially with the likes of, say, I know we're going to get to it, but incels, I think incels would benefit greatly from in-person therapy and actually being in a room for an hour with somebody focused entirely on them. And, you know, a therapist will happily just sit there for an hour, just looking at you, whether you say anything or not. And it can be the most frightening experience, but also a very liberating one, and also a very intriguing one, where suddenly somebody's listening to you as you are, how you feel, a real flesh and blood person. So I think it can be very meaningful, just in terms of actually having access to the whole person, to their mannerisms, their disposition, their smell, everything, the room that they're in. You know, therapists, most therapists that I've seen, their room is very, you know, specific to them, to what they're trying to create, a sort of space. It's all about the space. You know, it's not just about talking to a person who's got these qualifications. It's about creating a space that in your mind means that you are now not a part of society, you're not a part of any group, you're not a part of anything. It's just you on your own, and on your own terms for that hour. Nothing else matters. It's just you and your therapist in this room. And so that whole context matters a lot, I think. And I think you can only really get that in person.
Is that a projection of your personal belief, though? Or your personal feelings?
Definitely. Yeah. Yes.
Okay. I will leave it there. I will not delve into that more. I'll take that W. And I'll ask you the last round of questions I missed, which were about the woman who did not. Well, you can answer this one. It says, do you believe in racism and white supremacy?
As in, do I believe that racism? Oh, that's very...
They did not elaborate.
Okay. Well, yes, I believe in racism. I think everybody is racist to an extent, or has racial prejudice or racial bias. I think we all do. You know, I don't think it's exclusive to any group of people. Yes, I do believe in white supremacy. I believe that, to be fair, every group has some form of supremacy, or some supremacist individuals. You know, there's some fragments of Pan-Africanism which are quite exclusionary. So, you know, I think, I mean, I definitely believe in racism, white supremacy, all that. Crazy world we live in, but it is what it is.
Okay. That's interesting. The short questions be getting the most interesting answers from you. I like that. And then the round of questions I missed was regarding the helper. Did the helper make the decision not to serve you, or was it something that the family forced her to do? Is there, someone said there may be stigma around this? Could she have lost her job for serving you? As well as, could it just be that the maid didn't, or he said they didn't serve you because you were Black, and they did not want to acknowledge that you were someone higher up than her?
Yeah, well, I mean, as far as I can remember, this happened years ago when I was a child. It's in South Africa, at least among the Zulus, there is very much this idea of respecting your elders, and that children are very insignificant relative to your elders and adults. And so, you know, if anybody's going to serve anybody, it's children and women who cook and serve the family. And, you know, a child isn't served food. So at least, I mean, I'm sure it depends on where in South Africa you are, but I lived in sort of the heart of the Zulu nation in KwaZulu-Natal. So it was quite traditionally Zulu. And so that was the idea. And so when you have a child, a Black child who's there, and then you have a maid who's a Black woman who's married and is therefore respected, to ask her to serve food, to make food and serve it to a Black child whom inevitably she does not see as above her, it put her just based on sort of my now thinking about it, in a difficult position because she has to serve the white family because typically, at least when I was a child in South Africa, Black people were very much under the impression, it was sort of quite a universal, that white people are superior to you. I mean, you could see that in so many instances. I mean, once I remember I was in a store and I was getting harassed, like severely harassed by a Black man. And it was getting very scary. And he didn't realize that in the next aisle was the white woman who was fostering me at the time. And then she came and she just stood there and stared at him. And suddenly his entire everything changed. He let go of me and it was fine. And she just went at him and she was chasing him around the store. And it was the most bizarre thing because as soon as this white woman just appeared, didn't say anything, just appeared in the aisle and saw what he was doing, suddenly it just changed. Everything changed. So there was definitely that hierarchy and that different perspective of people. And so, yes, it wasn't that the maid was not allowed to serve me. She was expected to because this family saw me as being sort of a saved Black little white girl, basically. And so it was expected, just I guess assumed by them that obviously, like everybody at the table, I'd be served, but then everybody else was served and I wasn't, and it was odd. But yes, yeah, it is definitely, I can see both sides, I guess, but yeah, it's interesting.
A Black person being racist to another Black person, what would you consider this racism?
Yeah, because I do think we're all susceptible to prejudice, including racial prejudice. I think it's when we humanize people and individualize them that we get beyond that and we do better as people. But I think that when it came to, for instance, the situation with the maid, for instance, it was very much this is a Black child and therefore I will not serve her, as opposed to sort of any humanizing or individualizing of me as, okay, so why is this Black girl sitting here? Okay. And like, finding out about me, whatever, just there was no room or no space for humanization. Not saying that was the maid's fault or anyone's fault. It was just the context that we found ourselves in. So but I think it's important to humanize. But yeah, I think everybody is susceptible to racism, to racial prejudice. I don't think it matters what your skin color is. I think white people can be racist toward white people. I think it's a whole complicated mess, race relations in the modern world, in history. Yeah.
Okay. I will take note of that. In the last question from way earlier that I would take was, do you prefer to interact predominantly with white people?
I wouldn't use the word preference. I think it is just, I've always found myself in a majority white situation. Even in South Africa, it was majority white schooling, majority white neighborhoods, communities, majority white, at least when I was a child, I was very much raised Protestant. So, white people. So yes, I think inevitably that's really just influenced my likes, my dislikes, the culture and pop culture that I've been exposed to and have resonated most with. I grew up on ABBA, so it was sort of, I think that's just how it's been. And then moving here to the UK, I live in places that are predominantly white, went to university, predominantly white university. So I think it's just been circumstantial more so than an overt preference that I sort of consciously just gravitate toward white people when I'm given the option. I think it is just the environment that I've been in. And I think that definitely plays into the people who I get on better with. Like at my old job, for instance, there were 3 of us who were Black in this whole store, very big store with over 500 employees. And I found that, I mean, my closest friends were middle-aged white women, even though I worked with these other 2 Black individuals. I mean, we talk, but they didn't understand me. I didn't understand them. There was clearly cultural differences and cultural references that I really didn't understand. And I also find that just with young people as well sometimes, that it can be a bit hard to communicate. But yeah, I wouldn't say that it's an intentional preference sort of in the negative sense, but I think it is just a result and a consequence of just my life and how it's been and the people I've been exposed to. And also, generically speaking, the people who I've found most accepting of me as I am with this sort of crisis of identity. So yeah.
Do you think you are inherently biased towards Black people in a way that makes you adverse to being friends with them or initiating conversation and such like that in the way that you might with white people? And that could maybe is a reason why you don't have, I guess, as many Black friends or interaction with Black people as you do with white people? Or do you legitimately think it's a culture difference?
Yeah, I think it's a cultural difference. I mean, when I was at university, first thing I did was joined the African Union and Afro-Caribbean Society and all the African groups. You know, just I haven't sort of actively tried to distance myself from it, but I found it difficult being a part of those groups. Generally, people didn't like me for my opinions, my views. I also just didn't have that sort of cultural lingo. You know, it was very apparent and very obvious to me and to everybody else that I wasn't, I don't want to say that I wasn't meant to be there, but that I wasn't, but I didn't really fit in there. And so it sort of gradually, I started to dwindle out, just not going as frequently, having individuals not saving me a place at a table, those sorts of things. And so it was just, I think it's just obvious over time. And, you know, I can't pretend to be something that I'm not. It's, you know, you can fool people for a while, but eventually they clock on. So yes, it isn't something that I sort of don't interact with Black people. I happily do, but yeah, I mean, I think it is just circumstantial and based on my situation and who I'm surrounded by most of the time. So yeah.
And it just happens that you're generally not surrounded by maybe like-minded Black people, you said, because of the culture.
Yeah, I mean, where I live, at least the county I live in, I mean, I think I've said I can go a week without seeing another Black person. I mean, it's rare. It's yeah. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, today I went to the gym and there was another Black person there, and I mean, we both looked at each other because it was like, wow, like this has never happened before. So yes, yeah, it's I think it's where you live more than anything else. And where I live in the south east of England, it's predominantly, overwhelmingly white people. So yeah.
Okay, and then thank you. I had a final person in the back who I think wanted to ask a question, and this is literally it before the incels are racist name.
Right.
Hello, LB.
Hi.
Hello.
Sorry, I'm not on camera. The lighting is like really horrible here.
That's fine.
But pretty much, I like when I hear you talk. First, I want to say like what you experienced is something that I absolutely cannot understand because I didn't live it. But also, like when I hear you talk, sometimes I hear it as if like it's very one-sided, and I'm not saying that you're like biased or biased in the sense of like the whole identifying with white people thing, although I think that could be a thing. But I think it's more so like kind of narrow thinking about like interpreting the things that have happened. So like for instance with the maid, I put it in the chat, but like with the maid not serving you, it could very well be bitterness because it's like, how dare her think she's above me? But the way that I see it, and my position's biased as well, but the way that I see it is more so that the Black maid has to serve this white family because there's social and like real life and possibly financial repercussions to not serving the white family. But when it comes to you, I think the not serving you is an acknowledgement of you as part of their group. And because their ethnic customs don't require them to serve their, it's the opposite of elders, like the young people in the family, that it was more like an acknowledgement of you as part of the tribe than like a disregard of your status based off the family you were adopted into or fostered by.
Yeah, I mean, with that, yes, yeah, I did say that, you know, it was about that I was definitely seen as a Black child, and therefore serving me, that's just not what you do. And also, I mean, this made, I mean, we didn't get on. She didn't like me at all, and I didn't like her. So, you know, it was the whole thing about everything to do with me not speaking Zulu, me being disrespectful because I was trying to be white, all these sorts of things. So yeah, it wasn't like a it wasn't a good I think dynamic between us, but yes, yeah, and so yes, there's a lot of things going into that, and that's a consequence of that. So I think now on reflection, I don't think anybody's to blame for that, because it was just a clash of cultures and a clash of all of our different bias and prejudice and everything that just did not go well. So yeah.
But I think it's interesting to perceive both things as racism, because like if it with the racism, like the maid is in the position where like there's a whole system that responds to her not serving white people, but in like regards to you, there's no system in place unless you do it strictly off of like class. But would you say that it's more of a class issue or a race issue that was going on in that situation?
I'm not entirely sure. I think it's a legacy of apartheid issue, definitely, because of the idea that the only people who are maids are Black women. The only individuals who work for white families are Black individuals, Black garden boys, Black maids, etc. And there's this inevitable hierarchy just in that, even if you are, for instance, I lived with a very poor white family, and they had a maid. And in terms of the life that she was living with her family and her husband that she just married, she actually had a lot more money than this white family. But because of this very entrenched idea of white families having a Black maid, it's what you did, even if it wasn't feasible, even if it didn't really make sense. It was what it was. So I don't know. I think it's very, there's a lot going on in there: race, class, prejudice, a lot of just this understanding of people's place in society. Yeah. It's a complex one. Interesting question, but yeah, I don't know how to answer that, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I know that like when it comes to race and class, they kind of like, because white people have typically in most cultures been like raised up to a higher class, it gets conflated. But I was wondering if it was more of like a race or a class issue that you felt it was.
Yeah.
But
Sorry.
I feel like you answered it. I'm not still pushing back.
Oh, yes. I mean, I know now, just on reflection, just at least watching the news and seeing South Africa and how it's progressed, we have now a very, very wealthy political class of Black elites who are dominating the country, and they have Black maids and Black servants. And so I wouldn't say, I can see a comment on the screen that it was race. The maid would have served her if she was white, regardless of her class. Why play this game? I think we have to play this game because it is a game, and it's a difficult and complex one. It's not as clear cut as that, because our political elite now have their Black entourage as well. And so it's things are getting interesting and very complicated as well.
Yeah.
So,
I agree with production inquiry that if you were white, you would have been served. But I also, my question was more so, do you think that it was that she didn't want to acknowledge that someone like her could have higher class than her, because she felt like, how can this child have higher class and I am an adult and I'm considered lower class? Like, I think it was more like that was more the class issue than like if you were a white child. And then the other thing that dang, I'm forgetting. Well, I had another question, but I don't recall what it was. Oh no, okay, I had a statement. That's what it was, and then I'm gonna leave. I promise, Petti. I'm gonna leave after. So, I wanted to say that I know that you feel like people think you're crazy because like you identify as a white person, and I just wanted to tell you, as somebody whose early childhood was in a border town, like border to Mexico, in a white area. So like my first like 5 years, I was surrounded by nothing but like white presenting Mexicans and white people in my elementary school. And it really took me going to an all Black school, like an all Black and darker Hispanic school, like to be like, oh, I'm like you guys. So like you're not crazy, because like when you're that little, you're like seeing the world outside of you and around you, but like there's not that like reflectiveness yet. So it makes sense, and I don't think you're crazy. I will say that like that kind of went away after like mid elementary, middle school. And then like going back into high school, I was grouped with all the African kids and the Asian kids. So I did have like a superiority complex for a short time. I've talked about this before on a different channel. But so like I understand going through those phases, but then I like as an adult, I had to like go back and like really look at those biases and why I felt that way. And the reason that I suggested in the comments was to go to a therapist that's not Black or white, is because I think sometimes when you're dealing with a specific issue like that, it helps to talk to someone who's removed from the situation. So like for instance, when I was dealing with like counseling for sexual assault, I actually went to a male therapist because I felt like a lot of my female therapists were too reactive in a biased way. So I went to a man just to balance it out. So I'm not saying necessarily like leave your therapist, because I do understand the connection of like a really good therapist, but it doesn't hurt to like sometimes like just check in with somebody who may not hold the same biases, and your therapist can be non-biased in her practice. That's possible. So I'm not saying that she necessarily is, but I'm saying like that was just a consideration that I was suggesting.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I'm definitely going to hold that. I think for a very long time, when I think about moving on and different therapists and all of that, I think it is very important, and I think you're spot on with that. Definitely, thank you.
No problem. I'm gonna leave now. Thank you for having
Thank
me.
you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, LB. My last question about the table is what the reaction was from the rest of the table when during this interaction where you were not served. A question that was persistent in the comments was, what was the reaction from the rest of the table?
Oh yes, I mean the matriarch of the family. I mean she said that she had to serve me, that the maid had to serve me. So I did get food at the end, but it took a while, and it definitely didn't heal any wounds. If anything, it just cut even deeper into the wound. But yes, I mean, I did get food. Yes. But yeah. Who knows?
To me, it was more important. Not that you got food. Well, that's important. I mean, you gotta eat. But that your family, I would hope, would stick up for you, even like in this, what I think is like a really racist way of you must serve us because we're white. But at least to me, I think it was good that they stuck up for you and were not just like, eh.
Yes. I mean, yeah, I would say that they themselves, being white South Africans, they didn't understand where their maid was coming from. They were definitely on, I think just oblivious, like a lot of white South Africans back in the day were. I'm not sure about now, haven't been back home since I left, but yes, I do think that they were definitely didn't understand the cultural context behind why their maid wasn't serving me. And so to them, it was, what is wrong with you? More so than an understanding of, okay, this is why.
Okay. My last line of questioning is regarding incels. Are you ready? Are we good?
Yes.
Okay. I want to start off by welcoming again the Kiddos, the Kidology people. Welcome, Kiddos. If your name isn't, what did you say their name was? The Brethren,
Kidologists.
Kidologist. I just feel like Kiddos is just rolls off the tongue better if you want to consider that trademark, copyright, Prince Petti, royalties, and all that. So you have a video titled something like "Incel Stole My Identity and Experimented," in which you describe a group of incels. I believe they are referring to themselves as the looks maxing or the whatever, a bunch of maxing I saw community.
Yes.
And after you did some investigation into their online forums and communities and made a video essay on your findings, their response to that was kind of like they stole your identity and they posed as you online while using your photos to engage with some online dating apps like I think Bumble, Tinder, maybe, as well as making slanderous comments towards your physical appearance. Specifically, in a lot of instances, they attacked you off the basis of your skin color and your racially Black features. If I recall correctly, they would call you the N-word with a hard R. Other slurs such as a shaboon, monkey, baboon, saying things such as go back to Africa, like the regular racist stuff. Cartoonish racism almost. But obviously there's a lot more to it, but for the sake of a brief interview, I wanted to focus on the racial aspect of their criticism towards you. Before we continue, is this a fair assessment of that interaction? Is there anything you'd like to add or subtract to my recollection?
No, that's pretty accurate. I mean, do watch the video. But yes, I think that is, concise, succinct, accurate. Yeah.
So what I'll do is I'll put a link to the video in my description. That way anyone may go and watch that to have context, as well as if my moderators are in the comments, The title of the video is Incels Stole My Identity and Experimented, and I learned a lot. If you guys want to go over there and grab that link just to put it in the chat so that people can go for context, you can. So let me see. You made a follow-up video too, and it was titled Incels Aren't Racist, in which you address some claims from your audience that the incel community, and even more specifically those individuals that were calling you monkey and such, were racist. You started off by saying that these individuals were just lashing out. And while I don't disagree entirely there, I don't think lashing out implicitly has to be racial. You know what I mean? I think that the fact that they were lashing out can be separated from them being racist. Do you agree?
Yes, I do. Yes, I think, as in that them. Sorry, what are you saying exactly? That them being racist is separate from?
I think them lashing out as an action and them doing so racially, I think those things are distinct from each other. So to kind of, I guess, dismiss it as they are just stressed out, lashing out, pent up anger or something like that, I feel like that would be an incorrect way to assess it, because you can do so without being racial.
You can, but that's for you and me. We're in civil society. We talk to people off the internet. These individuals are overwhelmingly disconnected from the world. A lot of them are going through a phase of this disconnectedness, sort of, I think, very impressionable young men who are sort of entering the dating market and world and are just facing overwhelming rejection when their entire life prior to this, they've never been rejected for anything, or life has just been, life, innocent childhood. And now suddenly they're realizing that actually, women don't like you. And these Instagram models that you see, they actually don't, they don't love you in the way that they may on OnlyFans. So I think it's a hard realization, and that this is sort of a forum, like a lot of forums, where you go on in order to vent, in order to actually have people acknowledge your frustration and your anger in a way that at least is not policed, and that there's no consequences or real consequences for. You can be anonymous, and you are, I think in a way, you're sort of absolutely free from all extenuating circumstances or consequences, which I think is a way for these people to just deal with the situation that they find themselves in. A lot of them can't afford therapy or wouldn't go to therapy because in general, they are pretty horrible, like really not nice people at all. But I can also understand why they aren't nice, because a lot of their views, especially Black pillars, who tend to be the most misanthropic, the most pessimistic of these individuals, who sort of just see a small group of men as getting all the women, and that women are only interested in the small group of men, and that the majority of men, especially Black pillars who tend to be at the bottom of everything, are not going to get any woman. I mean, a lot of what they believe is, to an extent, true in modern contexts, insofar as ideas about race in dating, dating racial preferences. You can see, at least with data that's collected from dating apps. And importantly, it's important to remember that the vast majority of incels, they only see dating and the world through the internet. So they only use dating apps, which is a terrible thing to do. You should never, if you want to find happiness, leave dating apps, unless you're just going for sex and you also don't care about how people look, then do dating apps. But if you're actually looking for what most incels are looking for, which is real connection and connectedness with somebody, which they regrettably conflate with Stacey's, that is conventionally beautiful blonde white woman who have big breasts and just want to have sex all the time and just want to be trad wives, basically, in their minds, then you're definitely not going to find what you're looking for. You're definitely not going to find happiness or any such person. So I can understand where they're coming from insofar as what they see online, which very much confirms a lot of their beliefs. But in terms of how society also treats them, I can then also see why they are so hateful, because at least online, when I see people talking about incels, oftentimes it's with no compassion or with no sort of understanding. It's just that these are privileged white boys who have way too much time on their hands and are racist and think that they are entitled to sex and that they're misogynistic and just horrible people who are on the verge of committing some kind of mass atrocity. Vast majority of incels are not like that at all. Most of them are just disproportionately on the spectrum and don't have anyone to talk to or any help. They don't have the money or the means or the social skills to actually go out into the world or to go beyond, say, their environment, their community where they live and have grown up, in order to experience new things, see more of the world. And they also tend to project what they see and experience online into how they interact in the real world, which therefore acts as a sort of self-fulfilling prophecy, as opposed to the world informing how they approach the internet. You know, in the world, people don't look like Instagram models. People are just people with imperfections, with their quirks, with their different mannerisms and smells and everything. And to appreciate that, and then to go online and be like, oh, this actually isn't real. I think that's important, whereas they do the opposite. So I think because of that, they get they don't get hardly any sympathy or anybody actually wanting to engage with them. Yeah, so they just try to reinforce and fulfill their belief. And so I think when they say to me all the horrible racist things that they've said, they did that in order to, because they saw and they knew that I was on their forum. I'd been on there and watching them and researching them. They wanted to scare me off. That was the idea. And typically the way you scare somebody off is by really just being horrible. And at least in this day and age, the most horrible you can be is by being racist towards somebody. And so, I mean, the things that they said about me were just the bottom of the barrel racist comments. Like they're sort of meaningless at this point, because they just are so, you know, if you're going to be a racist, like racist people really, like, it's in their blood and their bones, and they really, I mean, the world is seen through racism, and you really know when you've encountered somebody who's racist, because it's deep. It's really deep. And this was nothing of the kind. This was just people lashing out in order to reinforce their belief about how the world is ordered in this clean-cut, simple way, which it isn't. And it was just to scare me off, to get me away from their forum, from their safe space, their place of being. So yeah.
Okay, so there's a lot to address there. Let me start by first, I wanted to read the very first comment on my screen, at least on that video from your audience. And then I wanted to kind of go through each point I feel that you made. And the first comment says that racism should be seen as a verb, not a noun. these people perform racism in your direction. Just because you have empathy for their position in life and because you don't feel personally offended by their words doesn't make their actions any less racist. Racism is not a terrible personality flaw or a dirty word. It's a discourse that we all intersect with in various ways. If someone uses racist slurs, why shy away from calling it what it is? Someone performing racism can still deserve empathy and love and can still be redeemed, but it is racism. How do you respond?
I somewhat agree. I think I'm just very aware that these individuals, I mean, the way that they talk to each other, it's very clear that they're very disconnected from the world and from anybody. Some of these individuals, just based on recent studies, like the ones who are on there the most of them, it's sort of a phase that they go through and then they just move on and they, you know, they meet a girl in the real world and they realize, oh, actually, you know, this is rubbish, and they get on with their lives. You know, I think it's like a phase that people go through, you know, like a lot of young women go through their sort of radical Marxist feminist phase, and, you know, you grow out of it. And I think it's important to allow people that time to grow out of those things, right?
Can I pause you there? It is important. Yes, you can have empathy for someone and room to grow in something like that. I used to be an avid Xbox player when I was a little kid, and what you may or may not know about Xbox is that literally every little white boy on Xbox will call you the N-word, this N-word, that, whenever they're losing the game as such. And those men have probably grown up to be well-adjusted, sure, probably not racist, I hope, don't know. But it's not that they have that room for growth or anything like that, that I'm going to not call it racism, when it very much, to me, that was very explicit racism.
Yes, but I say the difference with that is that you're playing with these boys on Xbox. You're doing like a social thing, right? And, you know, you probably go to school with them.
It's kind of like you were on looksmaxing.org or Reddit, wherever. It's kind of like anonymous online. So it's not that know these people are playing in a room with them or something like that.
Yes. But in terms of the most recent study that came out about this website specifically, in terms of sort of the names that I saw on Looksmax and then cross-reference them to the study, like you could see the people who posted the most, like the vast majority, like over 75% of people who are on looksmax.org, who are on actually all incel forums that are quite prominent, vast majority of them don't post at all. There's like 10 people who make up like 80% of posts. Like, it's unreal. One of them is an 18-year-old boy who joined like only this year and has literally made the majority of posts on one of these sites. Like, these are like the 10 people who are so disconnected from everything and from everyone. They are on their own mission. And I think we can't apply the same standards to these people in a way that is helpful to understanding them and hopefully getting them out of this worldview and vision of themselves and of other people by applying and projecting the same expectations and standards that we would on a well-adjusted individual who is a part of civil society, who actually knows the difference between right and wrong and knows that you treat people as individuals with respect, that you are not racist to them. But these individuals are just they're in their own world, quite frankly, literally in their own world. So and it is sad to see, but I think we don't help ourselves, especially by projecting our worldview onto them, because that just reinforces their worldview inevitably, sadly. And I know it's difficult. It's difficult to know that you're right, but to have to take a piece of humble pie and just do something that is not conducive to what we would expect of ourselves and to others. But I think it's important for the bigger picture and in the long term. It's hard, I know. And I know these are horrible people. These 10 people, they're pretty vile. They, scum. But we live with them in this world, and it's better to try and understand them than to dismiss them and ridicule them because they have their problems and they have their chronological history. There's a reason why they are at this point, and we don't know that. I mean, it could be heartbreaking, the stories that these individuals may have, if they could only talk to somebody about it. But nobody wants to talk to them or humanize them or engage with them. So why on earth would they want to humanize or engage with me or with you or with anyone? So they're just going to lash out and reinforce their current worldview because it's safe.
You don't believe that you can humanize or empathize with someone while also calling out like a bad behavior for what it is? And might I ask for clarification as well? What do you mean by, within this context, we don't help by projecting our worldview on them?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, I think our worldview, we live in a very contradictory society in which we are told that personality and the individual matter. And I think deep down, we know that that is the case, that especially when we get into a relationship and we actually connect with someone, build a life with somebody, with our friends, whom we don't really have much of a choice of who we connect to. It's very emotional, very chemical. It is sort of just what it is, really. You're either drawn to somebody or not, and you build something together. It's very, I know this is wishy-washy, but very like fate-based, if anything. So, it's the world, on the one hand, is that. But then on the other hand, we are just surrounded by a culture, especially by social media, which shows us and tells us that if you are white, if you are beautiful, if you look like an Instagram model, if you look like a gym beast, you're going to get all the attention, all the money. Everybody's going to be flocking to you. Everybody's going to subscribe to you. Everybody's going to want to be like you. And that everything is about money. It's about clout. It's about superficiality. It's about cosmetic surgery, plastic surgery. And so we have these two realities simultaneously. And for young people who are now increasingly being socialized more than ever by the internet and by social media, rather than by their parents or by schools. Schools are just failing everybody. That's a whole different conversation, but that's just a disaster in and of itself. I think the root of all of this is education, but that's, again, something else. But I think when you have young people who are being socialized increasingly online, they're going to see this and they're not going to be exposed as much to this alternative real world, which is that actually it's about far more and about things that are a lot harder, a lot less physically and at face value based than what we see and what sells. Because right now we see what sells is sex and money. That's literally what everything is, what all advertising you can see is. I mean, now even kids are being dragged into it with like Balenciaga and everything. Like, people know that that sells. And so it's very difficult to then convince these young people, these young boys, a lot of them, boys bordering on manhood, who suddenly realize that actually, it's really hard now in this modern context in which I can't just be a man, because now I'm competing not just with other men in the workforce, but with women. And women are, the majority of the cases, smarter than me, at least insofar as education, getting jobs, even starting in some generations to earn more money than men. Like, it's very competitive. And we also live in a culture that's far more inclined toward an appreciation of feminism. And I think sort of inadvertently the demonization of masculinity and what is masculinity. And so a lot of people feel quite lost. And I think in feeling lost and in not having any guidance and in not being as easily swayed toward, I guess, modern politics of the left or the right, they find these forums. And, I think it's sad, but I think we don't really offer a terribly great alternative to them in the outside world. And we're not receptive to them either. And I think for the vast majority of incels, it's a phase, they're going to grow out of it. Like, in terms of the turnover rate of memberships on these sites and dormant accounts, I mean, it's substantial. But, for the individuals who are there through the rest of their lives, the days of their lives. And increasingly, I think, as time goes on, it's going to grow inevitably if we don't do something meaningful about it. I think, you know, I can understand or try to understand why some people end up on these forums and in these spaces in order to try and find an identity, in order to try and find meaning, in order to find a place where they are, at least they feel that they have some semblance of control over themselves or over other people. It's very hierarchical in these forums as well.
Here's where you're losing me. You are launching into what I feel like is a very empathetic monologue towards the community, into understanding them, why they are, how they get here and what they do, which is fine, which I said earlier is fine to have empathy and such like that. But where I have a lapse, where I feel like there's a lapse in logic, number one was what does projecting worldview on them look like within context of someone calling you slurs and such, and then you calling them out on that, as well as
Yeah, I think, okay, well, firstly, I mean, we live in a world in our modern context where, at least on dating apps, as I said, where these individuals mostly go to in order to try and get with women and find their true love. On dating apps, it is regularly, time and time again, shown that race matters, very much so, especially on the most prominent apps like OkCupid, Tinder, and when it comes to gay apps and LGBTQ plus apps like Grindr, most definitely race is very important. So they can see this. They can see that in society. And when it comes to society being online and on social media, race matters. I mean, you can see that even on YouTube, the most prominent YouTubers are overwhelmingly whites in any community, in the video essay community, in the political commentary community, what have you. It's everywhere. We can see this in our modern context. In terms of what is valued aesthetically, it's your conventional, attractive, Caucasian aesthetic and a Kardashian, basically. So, you know, it's they can see that. And I think a lot of the time we try to, in our society in which we live, we, you know, in civil society with people, we do go out into the world and we make friends with people and we make friends with them for things that are not like what we see online, right? We interact in the world. These incels, they don't do that and they see this. And so then when I go on this site or make a video about them or whatever, they project exactly what they see in their worldview and in their image. That's, okay, who is this, right? This person, we don't know anything about her because that doesn't matter. It's all about the physical. So, you know, she's a Black woman. And so we're going to resort to every single derogatory term that we can associated with that, because that is all she is. She's nothing else. She's not a human being. She's just a profile, really. And so they then go for all of those things. And the things that they say are, you know, the kinds of, not things that people say in civil society, but in terms of being treated as not desirable, as not being attractive, as definitely not being the standard. You know, I wouldn't say they have a point, but I'd say that, like, it didn't affect me, because I'm like, oh, well, you know, this is the world that we live in, at least online, the virtual world that we live in. Virtual world is anarchy, and it's horrible and brutal to most people. And these just tend to be the people who are most affected by it and are most implicated by it. So yes, I think it's very hard to disprove a lot of what incels say about modern culture and modern society, because they make points. I'm not saying they make good points, but I'm saying that they do make points to things that we see in our world which most of us at least have the social skills and abilities to realize is the internet, or find different, better, more harmonious communities to be a part of, and also have people in our real lives and families who care about us and friends who care about us, etc. And I would hazard that these individuals don't have that they don't have families, that they don't have sort of well-adjusted communicative skills, that they have severe mental health issues and are suffering from loneliness. They overwhelmingly suffer from suicidal ideation and attempted suicide as well. So they have a lot going on, and they sort of an example of why there is a loneliness epidemic and a mental health epidemic in modern societies, and what happens when you just try to ignore that, or just try to throw pills at that, or just try to pretend that it isn't there.
Wait.
And easily just label people rather
Malcolm.
than just try to actually communicate with them and understand them. So I think we are as much to blame for incels being a thing as they are to blame for manifesting themselves in the world. I think it's a societal issue, not just an incel issue.
So I think this is, it feels like a weak argument for this reason. You are making a distinction. I felt there was a distinction, you can correct me, between we live in a world, we live in a society, and so on and so forth, where Caucasian and white is aesthetic, and real people like me and you, well-adjusted people, I think you're well-adjusted, despite what you said, interact, and kind of get out and mingle and can sort of dispel like the racial thing, the societal racial bias. But incels, on the other hand, are kind of shut-ins, don't really get out, don't really interact with people, and like you described with dating apps and such, are like just in this really kind of, what's the word? It's kind of a booty environment to be in. And here they are internalizing and blah, 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 so forth and so on. I did not explain that very good at all. But did I get the gist, at least, that there's a distinction between well-adjusted people versus these people who are finding it difficult to adjust? And now, instead of, looking for empathy for these people, we are kind of demonizing them and such.
Yes, I mean, I think incels are a very diverse bunch. I think there's definitely a business in it, especially increasingly on YouTube, with individuals who are really capitalizing on it, especially in the red pill community, which tends to be a bit more hopeful, a bit more optimistic, but also very critical of modern women, modern society, and how it treats men and masculinity. But then there also tends to be, I find that the black pill community is as it suggests, black pill, it's the most severe pill you can take. It's a lot more severe. And I think it attracts, I think, I can only think sort of their equivalent in sort of late Tsarist Russia nihilists who were just very nihilistic about the future of Russia, who were willing to, who were quite suicidal, not sort of there mentally, very, very clever intellectuals, read a lot, sort of very philosophical, Nietzsche enthusiasts, those sort of individuals. At least they had a very weird interpretation of Nietzsche. But I sort of see that equivalent now in incels, that they are, at least in this sort of black pill sphere of incels, individuals who are just very misanthropic and just have no hope, and are, I think, very self-involved in that way, and just have been sort of beaten down by society, or feel that way, importantly, feel that way, and feel that there's no way out. And so somebody's playing violence in the chat.
I tried to remove it quickly.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, this is tragic, isn't it?
But
yeah.
It is in that reasoning, though, that I feel is flawed. And I would like to point out a personal anecdote of my own, to hopefully describe what I'm seeing. There's a bar that I frequent in my city, and there's a homeless man who also frequents this bar. Well, he doesn't frequent it. He lives outside. He sits outside, and he's homeless in a nearby alley. And he's there pretty frequently. And on a particular day, I saw him being bullied by some middle school kids. I don't know why middle school kids are so like, middle school kids have absolutely no sympathy for anybody.
Oh yeah, they're horrible. Yeah.
But I kind of shoot them away, like, get out of here, you little rascals. Because, you know, big, strong alpha male, me and whatnot. And I extend my hand and a few dollars to the man, who I feel is on hard times because he's presumably homeless. He sits outside all day, and he slapped my hand away and said he doesn't want my money N-word. Well, he didn't say N-word. He said the N-word to me. And to me, again, that's like over the top comical racism that you only see in like media or something. And this is kind of where I see you in this position now, where you're defending this community who has responded by calling you baboon, monkey, and other racial slurs. And the response that I think a lot of your community had to that was, this is horrible and racist. And I think we were justified to have that view. But your response to that was to launch a defense video. It would be, to me, it would feel weird having my friends have seen that interaction and being like, oh my God, that was racist. And I like respond like, actually guys, you have to understand that he's homeless and like it's really stressful out here, and he was just like lashing out towards me. So you have to have nuance with this situation, because technically racism doesn't actually mean like what you're trying to make. Like, it would be, to me, if I'm concerned about what just happened, it feels really weird for that to be the response. And even though I do believe that nuance is needed for such situations, well, first, I don't feel like nuance is needed for that situation. I'm definitely just going to call that man racist and go on about my day after I pick up my money off the ground, because I'm not particularly wealthy. But I mean, maybe if you're a researcher, I understand you do video essays and such. I can see it from that perspective, but like to a wide audience of people, I can't see this being like, I can't see this being feasible. And I don't think I'd like it to be.
Okay, yeah, I see where you're coming from. I think using your example, for instance, right? Okay, you know, that homeless guy was horrible to you, you know, fuck him. But then I think it's also important for us to see the context of this whole thing. You know, there were these horrible middle school kids, right? They're horrible. They would say the most horrible things to anybody as well. But we appreciate their context, right? They're middle school kids. They're growing. Hopefully, the majority of them, vast majority of them, will turn out all right. They'll be fine, right? And, you know, whatever. And I think also we need to consider the context of this homeless man. Homeless people, well, not homeless people, but people who have severe mental health issues tend to, I think, when you see, for instance, public displays of racism, there's a bit of a debate about this now because of this woman who was on the subway in New York, and she went on this huge rant about individuals with the hard, with the N-word, with the hard R. And it was clear, at least to me, and I think to a lot of people, that this woman was had severe psychological mental health issues, that this was very peculiar. And I think when it comes to those instances of people who sometimes are homeless people, there's quite a few homeless people in my area as well. And in terms of the things that they shout out to me and shout out in the public, in our underground, etc., like it is very racialized or very bigoted, very prejudiced sort of things that, again, these individuals are not, I don't think it is helpful to apply the same kind of standards and expectations of actions, of decorum, of how you treat other people to individuals who have so clearly been beaten down by society and also have disproportionately higher mental health issues, which manifest themselves and express themselves in ways that are in no way conducive to how we interact with each other and in society. And I think it's a difficult conversation because I see this debate a lot of individuals saying, it doesn't matter if you are schizophrenic. It doesn't matter if you are, a recovering alcoholic or you coming down from a high of a heroin shot. It doesn't matter if you say the most deplorable, horrible things. That's still racist and you're still a racist. And I think it's an interesting discussion. I think it's a difficult discussion, but I think that we do need to appreciate that. I think like this homeless individual and like sort of homeless individuals who I sometimes encounter as well, who are, at least in my area, overwhelmingly white. And so it's interesting interactions every now and again. But I think the commonality between those homeless individuals and these particular, I would say, little microcosm of incels is that they have, in a way, been rejected by society, that they are pariahs, outcasts, and are seen as either ignored completely, I think in most cases, just ignored by the vast majority of people, as if ignoring them will just make them go away. And that isn't going to happen. And I think we really do have to confront this in a way that oftentimes is not comfortable and is not the way that I think is seen as the standard way that we would with our fellow citizens in the world. I think it's difficult.
So in that case, you are for me. I was saying it as a joke, but you are for me turning to my friends and saying, actually, that is not the technical definition of racism. You see, this man has been going through some stuff. You actually are for...
No, I'm saying that we need to consider nuance, that we need to consider that these individuals are multifaceted. You don't know, you don't know why. No, but I mean, for instance, with an insult, like you don't know, for instance, like somebody has, for instance, my history. Like I have my views, and obviously everything I've said in this conversation is going to be taken out of context by somebody somewhere, I'm sure. But you all know, for instance, the context of why I think the way I think because of my very unique, different upbringing. Some of these incels, I'm sure, have been in homes where they've been neglected, abused, where they've, for instance, maybe gone to school where they've been like a minority and been bullied by the majority race or what have you. And so they have these views for a reason. I think that we need to really be appreciative and understanding of everybody's very personal history, which doesn't necessarily correspond to that of the majority experience, especially increasingly. Modern societies are very different to societies of old, where it was sort of very, very much sort of the same for particular classes sort of heading up into life. Everybody sort of had their place, knew what they were going to do. Everything was very clear cut. Nowadays, everything is very precarious. Everything is ambiguous. And I think because of that, it's created the need for a lot more empathy and a lot more understanding and a lot more labor-intensive work in terms of trying to actually understand people, even people who are deplorable, who are just so horrible that I mean, I'm not saying that I sort of just saw what these incels were doing and just sat there and just thought, right, how am I going to understand them and try to understand them? No, when I read those things, I thought, fuck you. And, I wanted to punch them and, just sort of watch them being run over by a truck or something. Of course I did. Of course I'm a human being. But I think after I had that reaction, and even now, I have my moments where I'm like, oh my gosh, these people are just a waste. But then I'm like, you know what? No, that doesn't help me. That doesn't help anyone. That just makes me feel bitter and angry and also self-righteous in a way that really doesn't do anything meaningful for me at the end of the day. And, these people aren't going away. I can't just ignore them. You can't just ignore the homeless people on your street, irrespective of how rude they are to you, irrespective of whether they're getting in the way. They're going to be there, and we've got to do something about it. And the sooner we start to do something and start to actually face up to things about society, about ourselves, about everybody, the better in the long term, I think.
What I fear is I don't see a clear and definite line with you between trying to understand versus being permissible of something, in the way that we maybe look at historical racism and we see pictures of white families at lynchings or other, events like that, where maybe Black people are literally burned at a stake or something, and it's children even gathered around to partake in events like this. We can look at this in a historical context and say, hey, this is a certain time period in which something like this is appropriate for the people to do. Mm-hmm. But it feels like to me at least, it feels like you've moved past that into justification a little bit to kind of dismiss it.
No, because I'm looking for a way forward. I think that this is just a part of the process of actually getting to a point of actually communicating honestly and openly with these individuals. Because I think that in sort of closing that conversation, that doesn't help anybody. That just firstly reinforces their worldview.
Keep in mind, I want to clarify, I'm not saying the conversation should be closed or that we shouldn't do research, have empathy or anything, mm-hmm. but I do not see issue with people directly calling this racism when they see something like this happen in front of them. And I don't know that I would request people to have that nuance in their interaction.
Yes, but as I said, I think when the idea of calling incels racist is very misleading, because I do hold by that. They're not racist. They are a very multifaceted group of people, very, very diverse, far more diverse than is at least promoted.
Not in as well as I'd like to make a separation between the community of incels as well as just the individuals who were using the slurs and such.
Yes, I mean, as I said, in terms of these individuals who specifically communicated, said these things about me and did this whole little experiment in order to just prove their points. I think, as I said, the things that they said about me were just comical. That, it was horrible, but it wasn't comparable to the kind of actual, very deep-rooted racism that I have experienced in my life in the UK and in South Africa. It really, it was not in any way comparable. This was very clearly individuals lashing out and trying to find any means, the most hurtful means that they could, whilst also finding the easiest means. And I think the easiest way to frighten people off, to really cement at least this view that these particular incels have, which is that everybody hates them, that the world is against them, is to try and reinforce that. And so you're going to reinforce that by really anybody who in any way tries to step into your territory, getting rid of them. And that's what they try to do. They obviously don't know me well enough. I really don't. It's far too interesting on looksmax.org. But I think typically that works for a lot of people in a lot of cases, especially with Black pillars, in terms of really reinforcing their worldview, and anything that goes against that must be condemned, must be completely obliterated in order to keep the perception that we live in their interpretation of the Matrix. So it's
But the means that they used, it was racist.
I'd say the means that they used were racist means, but I say that it was a means to an end. Whereas I think racism in and of itself is an end, like real hardcore, deep-rooted racism is an end in itself. It's really horrible, and it is something that sort of subsumes a person. These were people who are just very disenchanted with their lives, who have all variety of issues, and they saw a Black woman, okay, everything that we can say about Black woman, everything. And it's horrible, and they are pretty horrible people, but I wouldn't say that they are horrible because they're racist. I would say that they were racist because they're horrible, and because they're trying to reinforce their worldview about how dating works. Their main point was that even this individual who, as we can see on dating app statistics, is considered the most unattractive and undesirable demographic of female, gets responses, whereas we don't get any responses when we are on Tinder and Bumble and what have you. So that was their point, really. That was their main thing. And they put in all those outlandish, very stupid, very overused, comical even, racial slurs and racist terms in order to feel big about themselves. Because in this forum, they're the big guys. They're the important people. They're the ones who speak and everybody listens or just obeys. I mean, they were even having a purge of their members because they thought that somebody on the forum was talking to me. And so they turn on each other. They call each other the most deplorable things as well. They're just horrible people. And, a lot of them will grow out of it. Some of them won't, and that's unfortunate, but they're still going to be there.
You have to understand how this looks. We can't have anybody talking to Black people in this neighborhood. Get out of here, sir. Well, at this point, I feel like we have an admission from you that is racist, regardless of the reason for why they may have used those means to try to...
I said they use racist language. I'm not saying that they're racist. I don't believe that they're racist. But I think that they use racist language in order to feel big about themselves and better about themselves, and to prove a point that even somebody like me, who is considered, even by normal civilization in modern societies, to be the most undesirable. And in terms of my dating experience, they're pretty right that I find it a lot more difficult, and I think Black people find it a lot more difficult to navigate dating on dating apps. It's very, very brutal out there, very horrible. And so they made a point, but that doesn't, at the same time, I don't agree with their perspective of the world, because, as I said, they have a very particular perspective. They hate the world, but more than anything, they hate themselves. And you can just see that. You can just hear that. Like they're just very angry and very isolated and alienated. But yeah.
So maybe we're not disagreeing, but rather have miscommunication. Someone asked what your definition of racism was. Instead, I would like to provide mine, which I think of racism very specifically as what I think is the literal definition. Don't have Oxford right in front of me to confirm, but believing that a race is superior to an other, usually your own race. So believing that the race is superior physically, maybe mentally, for whatever reason. But I think we use it colloquially as like very encompassing of prejudice or discrimination or stereotyping or stigmatizing certain groups, bigotry and stuff like that. Under the colloquial definition, would you agree that these people are racist?
No, that's so vague, because that involves everybody in this world. I mean, we all hold prejudice and bias about people based on their generic group, based on their racial group, their ethnic group, their nationality. I mean, the amount of prejudice toward me just because I speak like a British person, based on the most outlandish and stupid stereotypes about poshness. And I mean, it's like a normal thing. I think in time people will start to call it out, but at the moment it's perfectly acceptable to be absolutely like quite horrible to people because they are because they speak like me online. So
would you also like to provide your definition? You can I just, if you wanted to,
of racism.
Yeah, you can simplify. I did.
No, I think I do agree with you on that, on the first part of that, this idea that some groups racially are superior to others based purely on their race and nothing else. So I agree with you on that. I think that when you were saying about sort of racial prejudice and everything, I think that applies to any group and every group. I mean, you know, my interaction with Black South Africans, for instance, there was racism there. There's racism between and within groups, insofar as individuals who are considered of the race and aren't of the race, or traitors to the race. You know, it's a whole thing. It's very complex. I don't think there's one definition that purely gets to it. I think that everything in every context is very specific and needs to really be considered seriously and with a lot of conversation and honesty. But I do agree with you insofar as what you were saying at the beginning about racism, about superiority. Definitely. Yeah.
I mean, my second definition was pretty all-encompassing, pretty broad. I'll give you that. But I didn't think you would disagree with it, because I think earlier in the live stream you said that it's your belief, at least, that literally everybody is a little bit racist.
Yeah.
So we're not in disagreement.
Yes. But I think that what is important is that I think it's the same with like dating preferences, right? When we go onto dating apps, there's preferences. But I think what dating apps have done is claim that our preferences are paramount and front and center, and that there's no need to go beyond that, that it's perfectly fine to say no blacks in your bio, and for that to be okay, because then that in no way corresponds to how we actually interact with people. We don't choose who we interact with in life at all. And when we do, we find that we're attracted to the most bizarre individuals. I mean, like I've said this before, like in terms of the man who I have had the most romantic feelings for the longest time. I mean, he's a guy who's 5'1" and balding, and I think he is just absolutely gorgeous and glorious, and I think he's incredible, and he's the most handsome, most attractive man ever. On a dating app, I would have never even given him a second look. And I think that's where you need to move on from a prejudice. I think we all have prejudices, but we inevitably interact with people, socialize, communicate, and we go beyond that. And I think the problem with some of these incels is that they don't go beyond that. They see that as the be all and end all, and that there is nothing beyond that. There's nothing influencing beyond that. There's nothing of the unknown, which is everything to do with attraction, with forming connections with people, forming relationships, all of that. You can't simplify it. You can't define it. You can't explain it. I can't explain why I'm in love with a guy who's 5'1" and balding, and I think that he is like the most gorgeous thing on earth. I can't explain that. It makes no sense to me, but I'm gonna live with it because, you know, I'm happy, and that's the important thing. Like, this doesn't, prejudices and bias and sort of staying at that point of everything being about categories, groups, hierarchy, primarily the idea of the popularization of evolutionary psychology, staying in that lane, that's just miserable. It's misery. And you're going to just reinforce your beliefs. You need to move beyond that, importantly. And I don't think in our modern context, we have the resources, the tools, or the politicians or the political discourse that is getting us beyond these generic generalizations, beyond this lane, toward that very humanizing, individualizing sort of path that all of us need to get on in our own ways. And so that's the problem, I think. Yeah, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think someone in the comments said preferences are socially formed. I would agree, and I don't think what you just described would deviate too much from that. So I'm going to ask questions that I had earlier when you were describing the incel community to me, and then I will allow for anyone who would like to come up. You can. The link is pinned, and this will be literally the final round of questions from anybody in the comments. If they want to come up, you can click the link. You said that incels who are racist were a small portion of the community, maybe even negligible. I think you said something like 10. And in another video where you were detailing the type of incel community, you said it was, based on your research, a few accounts that were making up the majority of the posting. Maybe as high as 90%, was it? Or no?
I'm not, don't quote me on that here, but in my video, it says, the one that I did, incels aren't racist. Yes,
Okay.
yeah, the most recent.
And then the rest of the community doesn't really engage as much or post as much or do anything as much. Now, and so you would make this distinction between those people who are not posting and such. Now, to me, I personally disagree with this, because whether or not you yourself are the poster, that's not irrelevant to me, but I don't think it minimizes, I guess, the community as a whole partaking in and tolerating this sort of thing. Does that make sense? Like, aside from the fact that it's also, presumably, I assume if you're seeing this stuff, it's upvoted and pushed to the top of the algorithm and shown to wide audience, or no?
No, typically there's threads. You can start a thread and your thread can have a heading. And I mean, a lot of the threads don't get any engagement whatsoever. The ones that get engagement is the exact same people who start the thread, and they just talk to each other. It's just an echo chamber of these people just ranting about something, just anything, having a debate about something. And, whenever somebody says something, which there's always at some point during the day, somebody says something like, they've got a hot take. Actually, I think women are quite based. And then all the main people will come in and just completely destroy this person for even suggesting that women are based, like, how could you think that? And so I think a lot of that makes people go silent, makes the majority of these people not say anything, because this isn't a community of people who are trying to come together in camaraderie. This is a group of people who it's very hierarchical. Small group of people at the top who dominate the conversation, set the rules, set the tone, and just make themselves feel better by belittling everybody else, by sometimes purging and trying to find out who communicated with this Black degenerate on YouTube about us, who told her about us, confess. It's not a nice place. But in terms of individuals who may be feeling the same as you, who may be going through the same things as you, especially with regards to your looks, with regards to rejection, with regards to not having a job, with just sort of an ambient thing in the background, I can see why people sit there. I mean, even I, just researching it, it was just enthralling, just watching these individuals just talking to each other, the ones who did. But yeah, again, I think it's an example of atomization, sort of individuals together, but as atoms, and you can't really trust anyone. You know, it's sort of got that atmosphere. I read a book called Alone in Berlin, which is about a German couple living in Berlin during the Third Reich, and living like atoms. Like, you can't trust anyone, you can't speak to anyone. It's just sort of living in silence, except for, you know, those in charge dominating everything. And it's just, it feels like that a lot of the discourse, a lot of everybody in that space. And so I don't blame these individuals in the same way through this sort of lens of silence equates to compliance or condoning what is being said. I think that if you consider these individuals, a lot of them, most of them, quite suicidal, severe mental health issues. I mean, why would you type something that potentially could result in somebody telling you to just end your life because there's no point and there's no hope for you? You know, it's, yeah, it's sad.
I'm going to put an asterisk by that. Something you said moved me. Actually, in my tiny cold heart, I felt something jump a little bit, just a little.
Wow. That's made my new year. Gosh,
that made me want to take it back. Like, you don't get to revel in me changing my mind. But I'll come back to that. So to the next point, whether or not the community is racist or not, I think that's up to debate in my mind, because I don't know what percent of posts are doing what. You did the research, I didn't, so I'll leave that on the table. But even in your analysis of the specific individuals who call you, again, N-word, monkey, baboon, you still defend that they are not racist. And let me see. Oh no, my notes app closed. So that's fine. As we wait for that to load back up, how are you doing today? Are you feeling good?
Who, me?
All right. Yeah.
Oh, yes, I'm doing okay. Yes, I'm doing okay. Yes. Went for a long walk, got some fresh air, recorded a video, started editing it. Yes, it's been a good day. Yes, I cannot complain. Quite chilly though, but yes, just enjoying my own company, I guess. Yeah,
look at me launch into the discussion without being formal. How are the holidays? Did you do the Hanukkah thing and all that?
Well, yes, because I have friends who are Jewish, and so I went to see them and celebrated Hanukkah with them. Learned a lot. It was very interesting. I do enjoy exposure to different cultures, different individuals and their rituals and traditions. So it was a very beautiful experience, very, very moving. And yes, so I enjoyed that very much. Yes. Have you had a good holiday?
Oh yeah, I was out here in these streets. Let me tell you. I was out here in these streets doing degenerate things with my friends and family. It was a nice Merry Christmas.
Oh, brilliant.
Excuse me, holidays. It was a nice holidays. Nice holidays. I don't want you to offend the woke left and all that good stuff. You also said earlier, to get back to the discussion, sorry, just a quick little break, take a little break. And I'll end on this. You begin by saying that you begin the video that I was watching by saying that these people were saying this online and would never dare say this to your face. Is that correct?
Yes.
So I think that someone is afraid to display racism outwardly without the cover of an anonymous username online. I don't think that reduces their racist comments, doesn't.
I think them being face to face with me forces them to be exposed more directly to humanizing me. If we were face to face, they'd have to talk to me, they'd have to say hello to me, they'd have to actually communicate with me. They'd have to have justifications for what they are saying. They'd be very vulnerable, basically. In the same way that when you have sex with someone, you're incredibly vulnerable. Like you're completely exposed to them. So if they were face to face with me, it would be a very different story. I would bet, as I said, I bet money on it that these individuals would not have, they would not have the audacity, nor the courage, nor the vocabulary and language, the power and strength of language, or of actual good reason to say those things with meaning, and to actually make me believe genuinely that they were racist to the core, and that this was how they actually saw me, because I'd be an individual. I wouldn't just be some Black woman on the internet. I'd actually be a human being. And that's the thing with most incels who ascend, that is, they leave inceldom. It's because they've met a woman who's called Sheila and likes baking and plays softball, and we both like, I don't know, the Red Sox or something. Who knows? You've humanized this one woman who isn't all woman, and suddenly the world's brighter. It's different. You see things in a different way, and it's real. It's real hardcore stuff. So yeah, I think it would be very different. It would be interesting. It would be really interesting if somebody set up something like this, where somebody like found, like, you know how MTV's Catfish does, like they find the people and they come together and actually have to talk. And it's just so bizarre seeing these people. I mean, they're on TV, obviously it's for sensationalistic reasons, but it's interesting seeing them face to face, because suddenly they really don't have anything to say. And it's very awkward, very weird, and everyone looks very scared and vulnerable and like small little animals, very insignificant. Some of them are crazy, but you know, that's with every community, every group of people. So yeah, I think it would be interesting to like actually these people who made this little profile for me, to actually sit in a room with them and just talk for an hour. Therapy. It'd be fascinating.
I see two different things being said here. The first thing I see being said is that these folks don't have the balls to say it to my face.
Yeah.
And my response to that is that because somebody won't insult you to your face, I don't think it means that they're not insulting you. In America, even, at least we like it. We like it a little bit more when people are upfront with their stuff, as opposed to kind of two-faced, hey friend, how you doing, and then get behind your back and do the N-word thing. I don't think that someone is kind to your face even though they were saying the N-word online means that, oh, they've just had a epiphany, because now they have met a real Black woman in person, and so now they are able to empathize with me and no longer have the, you know, racist thoughts in real life. All they needed was to meet a Black woman. I think it just means maybe they're empathetic, like most people are. Most people aren't like upfront and aggressive in your face. I don't think so. Or they're cowards.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that it would be like an immediate thing. Like suddenly, like we'd be in a room together and I would just be like, oh, wow, gosh, I was so wrong calling her all those things. Like, you know, this is actually an individual. Like, it wouldn't be as easy as that, at least not for everybody. Like, definitely not. I think it takes time. With anything, it's about patience. And this is one thing that I do preach to like some of the incels that I have spoken to, that it is about, you need to humanization and actually really understanding people and human beings. It takes a lot of time and a lot of effort, and with that inevitable patience. And this is something which our culture, which modern society is not a fan of. Everything has to be quick. Everybody's meant to be with their significant other, having babies, you know, having a 6-figure job. You know, everything is about now. There's no time, there's no patience. Everything is just rushed. And so our culture doesn't promote what we actually really need, which is time, which is patience, which is empathy, which is understanding. All these things take a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of, a lot of, as I said, understanding. And it's hard. It is very hard, but we do live in a culture where apparently there's easy fixes for everything, where apparently everything is as clear cut and as simple as, you're a good person, you're a bad person, you're left, you're right, you're bigoted, you're not. And that just is not life. And we can see that in all the contradictions that just emerge and manifest from all of these simplifications. And I mean, the fact that the majority of incels ascend, that the majority of them sort of grow out of this, is just testament to the fact that actually that isn't enough for the majority of people, that this isn't enough, and that it is about time and patience and understanding. And I think with all of these things, it is about that. With even these individuals who said these things, for instance, if we were in a room, it may not happen in like an hour that they'll humanize me, but if we spent an hour together for a few years, things would, I think inevitably things would change. It would be like you get used to that I don't know, that mole on your neck that you can't get rid of, and you begin to love it. And it takes time, just like it takes time. It'll take time for me to not look in the mirror and sort of be shocked at what I see. But all I ask for is like patience and time and empathy and understanding, because that's important, and that is what keeps us in communication and keeps us as a society. And I think this is something I don't think have irredeemably lost, but I think we have lost it, definitely. We have lost that ability, and I think that is sad and not to our advantage in the future. So, yeah.
So what does this look like for Black people?
Well, that's a very difficult question, because Black people are so multifaceted and different. What Black people are talking about? Are you talking about
specifically for interactions in which a Black person is referred to by racial slurs and such? What does it look like to you to have more of an empathetic approach as opposed to the knee-jerk "that's racist" reaction? And I understand how it looks. I think I understand how it looks to have it on the back end, I guess. These are things that I also look into and research, like on my time. But what does it look like when it's happening to you, in front of you, around you?
Oh, it looks horrible. It's unpleasant. It's vile. It's unfair. It's cruel. It's brutal stuff. It's not nice at all. And definitely, I think everybody should be able to express how they feel about that. When those things were said about me, at first I laughed, and then after a little while, I felt, it did hurt me a bit. And, it was like, oh my gosh, I had a bit of a crisis of, just feeling quite hopeless. But I think it's important not to stay in that sense of hopelessness, and not to lose faith in humanity and in people and in the ability of people to actually do better and to progress from that. Who knows? Maybe, I've had subscribers who've said horrible things to me, deplorable things, sent me horrible emails, and then months later, they've written to me and apologized and explained things. And I think it's important to understand that people are not the same, are not stagnant, that in order to also understand and have empathy, we need to have forgiveness is very important, especially in politics. And I think that's the hardest thing to do. Forgiveness is very difficult. It doesn't come naturally. It's not a natural feeling, but I think that is the only way that we can actually move on to better and brighter things. It's hard because there's a lot in the past that has not been rectified, that is not that is incredibly unfair and unjust and is horrible. But we are only moving forward, and I think the only way that we can improve things is by actually doing better in the here and now for each other.
Okay. Do you think you're this will be my last question, and then we can go into, I'll do a short after show for if anybody has questions. It doesn't look like anybody does. Y'all, first of all, pause. Y'all have a lot of questions in the comments, but I don't see anybody coming up to address Kidology themselves, which I have a personal problem with, especially when Kidology just said these folks like to talk a lot of smack online when they're anonymous, but they don't want to say nothing to my face. And y'all are proving her right. So I have an issue.
Oh, yes.
Right,
this happens in my comment section all the time. Yes, that's why I have my live show, Call In. And it's interesting. As soon as you tell individuals who have a lot to say, just, okay, here's the link, call, and we can talk about it. It's just radio silence. People have a lot to say online, which is why I don't take what is said online as seriously as I would in person. Mm-hmm. And I think that's important because there is the internet has come, and it's come at a time, and we haven't really had the time mentally, psychologically, to really adjust to it, to the speed and the ease and the anarchy of the internet. So it's very, I think we need to just understand that I think in the same way that dating apps are just very unhealthy and are not in any way conducive or natural to us, I think the internet is exactly the same thing. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg's idea that we're going to live in the metaverse is just, he's lost the plot there, I'm afraid, because we're really not evolved to this in any way for it to be of benefit to us more so than it is in a negative way to us. So I think I think I don't hate online. I don't take too seriously because 99.9% of these people would never, if I say call in and let's have a discussion and say this to me, communicate with me, talk to me, humanize me and let me humanize you, wouldn't dream of it, couldn't imagine it, couldn't even fathom this. So, and then who knows? I might walk past one of them on the street and we might have a great interaction. And, they said all this horrible stuff about me online. So, yeah, I think we need to just understand that difference.
Okay. Back to my last question. Do you think you are bastardizing the argument that is being made against you? Because in nearly all of your responses, has been a need to empathize with the incel community, specifically with the racist portion that we're talking about now, and kind of see where they're coming from. The dating apps, and it's hard for young men out here, and the involuntary celibacy is difficult and such. Mm-hmm. But I feel that, especially when I went through the comment section on your video, where it's mainly your audience responding to you, everyone seems to be in the comments and open to the empathy and such. It's just that they're not willing to do this while not calling it racist. It feels like they want both of those things to be done. And it kind of feels like, at least in the original video, maybe they will feel that it has been clarified here, but it feels like you're dismissing the racial aspect of it completely to just say, but they live in a society,
Yes and no. I don't think I'm dismissing it altogether. I think we just need to pick our battles. I think there's a more important battle here in the way that I said that I think that these individuals used the racism as a means to an end of proving a point that was about them and how they feel rejected, and how dare I say that I've been rejected by men because women can't be involuntarily celibate, as opposed to racism being an end in itself, which is what racism typically is. There's no, it isn't really sort of a process. There isn't any need to justify it. It is just seen as, for instance, white people are superior to all other people, and it is what it is. And so, there's no need to justify it. There's no need to have any kind of rationality around it. It is completely irrational. It makes absolutely no sense. But people have built entire institutions, structures, worldviews, religions, and everything around these ideas. And it makes them feel a lot better about themselves and their purpose in the world. So, I think with this, it is about picking battles wisely. And it's difficult. And I'm not saying that we're going to pick the right battles, but I think in this case, I can appreciate that, okay, yes, they said horrible things. And yes, they said racist things, but I don't think that they are racist. And I want to have a conversation about something that I think in this context and with regards to these individuals and what they're saying and what this entire situation of taking my identity is about, I want to have a conversation about inceldom and about this idea that men and women are irrefutably different and that women can't have problems because women hold all the power and that everybody is against these men. And I think it's a matter of just talking about that and having that conversation as opposed to dismissing or I think diluting the importance or the value of that conversation in order to make a point about something, namely race in this instance, which at least to them is seen as, in their view, they're just saying exactly what is going on in the world because they have a very essentialist, very behaviorist view of the world and of people and groups and everything. So this is their worldview. So I have to sort of try and understand where they're coming from their worldview because they're not going to conform to my worldview. They've already rejected it and been rejected by the world in which we live in. And so we just get to a stalemate if we both stay in our worldviews. Somebody has to cross over, and they most definitely are not going to cross over into my worldview. Like, that's just not going to happen. Like, we know that. That's why this forum exists. That's why these people act the way they do on this forum. Like, somebody has to extend the first olive branch, and I guess in a way I did. So yeah. But yeah, I think it's a matter of just picking a battle. And I decided to pick a different battle, I think, or to prioritize one battle over another. At some point, potentially, we can have that conversation with them. But I think it will come organically from a dismantling of their very essentialist worldview. I think inevitably race is a part of that idea that there is hierarchy in everything, including race. And I think that they see that in the world insofar as just everything in our culture. And so it's very hard to disprove. And I think the way that you disprove that is by having these very honest conversations in our context in modern society. And that then sort of features into and trickles into their discourse and into disproving their very rigid frameworks of things and people. So yeah.
Would you maybe feel more comfortable calling it prejudice, discrimination? Because
to be fair, I don't really care what we call it. It is, I think everybody, I mean, I can't say how somebody else, another individual, another Black female would respond to what they said. If another Black individual had an experience with them and said that was racist, I would completely respect that. I think it is very personal to the individual parties involved, to the person involved, specifically the person who's receiving that. And so I'm not going to say anything about that. But I do think that I can say, based on statistics, based on information that is out there, that this idea that incels are racist, just that statement, which is everywhere, regrettably, is a completely false statement. And that just immediately, just in our very PC culture, inevitably just forces people and obliges people and encourages people to just not at all engage with these individuals. And I think it's a very misleading understanding and perspective of what an incel is. I think it's far more complex than that. And so, yeah.
Okay. Do we have to do this generally? Can't we have like a specialist that we can send in to negotiate, a Kidology who can go in and negotiate with them so that the rest of society does not have to?
Well, we're all in this together, sadly. I mean, you know, I mean, we're all here. If we want society to work, if we want it to be as smooth as it can be, I mean, we are all obliged to partake in society. We are in this sort of informal contract with governments, with each other, in order to procure and secure our longevity in life and the increased quality of our lives. It's inevitable. It's hard work and it's labor, and we have to work for it. I know it's difficult because the message being put out there in pop culture, on social media, is that, oh, it's just easy fix for everything. You know, you can become a YouTuber and earn a 6-figure income within, like, you know, a month of going viral. The most bizarre people get the most attention. The most beautiful people get the most attention. You know, it's all a mess, but we're not doing anything by pretending that it isn't a mess and just ignoring it, like ignoring the homeless man or ignoring the incels. We're not helping ourselves in the long term. We're not helping our future offspring. We're not helping future generations. We're not helping our own sanity and well-being. And so I think it's difficult, and there's no certainty or no guarantee of reward for any of this, but it is life. It is how we get through just this having been thrust into existence against our will, into sort of dealing with our mortality and the future. And so I think it's all we have. We only have each other, really. And I think we can do a lot better for each other than we are doing now, most definitely. So, yeah.
I mean, I still have the question of what does this look like practically in my experience of the homeless man slapping the money out my hand and calling me the N-word. What does it look like for me to have a nuanced reaction in this, as opposed to like walking away or going on about my day?
No, I think it's like, I mean, there's no formula to it at all. Like there really isn't any guidebook to this. I mean, you know, I think if a homeless man slapped money out of my hand and called me the N-word, I'd probably just say, oh, fuck you. And I'd walk away, take my money and, you know, you know, but I think, you know, in time, I'd think, you know, okay, why did that happen? Why did he say that? Why did he feel that way? I might inevitably, if I live in the area, see him around, see how he acts, see what he does. And, you know, he may not even remember me or even, you know, care or whatever. And I think that's important to move on from that. That's not necessarily that reaction or those emotions. I think they're important. I think everybody should be able to at least safely express their emotions. But I do think we need to also have that moment of quiet to actually think, okay, why did this happen? Or because I think there's a bigger picture, bigger influences influencing everything, including how that homeless man treated you, including how these incels treated me, including how the maid treated me, including how I treated her. A whole bunch of things that are like sort of, you know, we're like puppets on strings, never-ending strings that just go far back in time. And we need to try and understand that. But yeah, it's difficult. It is hard. But life is labor.
So you don't see this as like anything you can do practically in the moment or as such?
I mean, I think we can do something by talking about it honestly and openly with each other, with communities, with people.
Like, hey man, why did you call me the N-word? Are you experiencing something right now? Is everything okay?
No, I didn't say that. It's not like, I mean, it depends. It depends on the person. You know, some people will do that. Will say, you know, why did you call me that? Some people might have an emotional reaction to it. I think most people will, because it's very, you know, very out of the blue sort of thing. You wouldn't expect that. But I think, you know, you're having this conversation now with me about it, and we're talking about it. That's important. That counts for something. That opens a new perspective of it. The fact that you can talk to me about it in a very, you know, you seem to be very matter of fact about it. I think that's important, to actually to talk about these things, but to also see the multifaceted nature of these things. That's very important.
Okay. I will end my aggressive questioning there. I don't think it was too aggressive, was it?
No, you were lovely. You were very, very kind. Yes,
Cool little,
very, very lovely.
cool little discussion.
Yes.
We had someone in the back, but he just left. Oh, no, he's back. And then we had another woman who left. So I'm going to add, oh boy, here we go to the screen.
Do you mind? Can I just do this one question and then can I leave?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So sorry.
Get out of here.
So sorry. It's just getting a bit late and I'm a bit tired.
Oh boy, you have one.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
I actually have a question for you, Prince Petti. I have a question for you about this homeless guy. And I assume this is just an analogy, and this didn't actually happen. Maybe it did. I don't know. But with this homeless man, he was clearly racist towards you, right? Or at least maybe he wasn't racist. Maybe he was severely mentally ill or something along those lines. Now, do you stop helping all homeless people? Like, I mean, do you stop going to soup kitchens? Do you rally against soup kitchens because this homeless person was racist towards you? Like, do you go and like protest and hold, because obviously this homeless man was horribly racist, disgustingly racist towards you. He did this terrible thing. He needs to be held accountable, and the community needs to be held accountable. Does it not?
So I think what I would do is, for specific homeless people who use racial slur against me or do something that I perceive as racist against me, I would hold those individuals accountable. Yeah. Right.
Those individuals, like as individuals, right? Not as necessarily homeless people, though.
If there are people, I think Kidology disagreed with me earlier on this. If there maybe are more homeless people around, which sometimes they congregate, and they see this happen and are inactive about it, I may feel disdain towards that group specifically. But if it's individuals, then yes, I will.
Okay.
I usually just do individual based.
I think the question that I have here is, maybe this isn't about were these people racist or not, or even like, are incels racist or not? I think the question for me is like, are these people who are actually going through something that is horrendous?
Homeless people? Yeah, I think generally
homeless people as an analogy for incels. And
yeah,
so
I do.
Specifically, we're talking about.
Yes, I do. And I have acknowledged that throughout. You can be going through something, absolutely, and we can have nuance in why something may have happened or what brought you to this point. But I'm not going to like sit here and be like, no, this isn't racist. And I'm definitely probably not going to require a demographic, especially a demographic that looks like me, to. Well, okay, as we just discussed at the end, you're not, it doesn't look like you're expecting people to in the moment be like, hey, actually, this wasn't racism. This was just like his stress and stuff like that. So maybe I can be a little more sympathetic to your side of the argument in that regard, that I do think about situations later on and not just be like, clearly he was racist and that's the end of the discussion, which I don't think anybody, I hope nobody was doing that. It didn't look like it over on Kidology's channel.
That would be really bad, right?
Yeah, I think so.
To just totally discount like an entire group of people because like one or two people was racist. Like, wouldn't it be like disgusting if like one homeless guy who like might have had schizophrenia or something was like, I don't want your money, N-word.
Keep in mind,
turn around and and drop all soup kitchens and all homeless shelters because we need to hold this community accountable. It just seems kind of weird to me.
Are people advocating for that?
Oh no, I'm just like, as an analogy for incels.
Keep in mind though,
as an analogy for incels.
During the discussion, several times we have specified that this is for,
because that would be horrendous, right?
Yeah, we have specified several times. Sir, please. During the discussion, we have specified several times that we are talking to a very particular group of incels who have been referring to Kidology as the N-word, baboon, monkey, and such. There were several points, I feel like, where we made a distinction between the community and specific racist individuals.
But even then, we're talking about a very specific group of individuals within that community, are we not? And it's not the entire community, because the entire community, again, right, it's a hierarchy. So at the top of the hierarchy are the most vocal individuals. And then as you get down lower and lower into the hierarchy, you have a lot of people who are bullied into silence. So we're talking about a specific group of people who are more individuals than they are standing for the community of incels.
I still, when it comes to me, I still think inaction is bad. I would hope that people have some sort of self to stand up, even if they feel that they might be punished for it, which I think we maybe briefly touched on when we talked about the Crown Act, or when you brought up Germany, I think Nazi Germany, and people being scared to something like that. But I do generally, I would generally hope that people do speak up. So I mean, if you disagree with me there, then that's fine. But I generally
No, I mean, I think you do want to, but you're talking about the dominant group of human beings in an era. Like the Nazis were the people in control of the government. Incels are not in control of anything. If they were, they would be probably not experiencing the same problems that they're experiencing now, right? And we are still in agreement that they are experiencing something. Because if you want to talk to me about, like, is it really they can't find an intimate relationship? I can, you know, I wonder about that myself. Is that really the problem? Is the problem that they're saying is the problem really the problem? But something is going on. Something horrible is happening to these people.
Okay. Oh boy, you can stay up, but I would like Amber to go because I think Amber had a question for Kidology. And if you don't have anything for Kidology, then I want to get her out. But then we can continue our discussion after.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, definitely.
Go ahead, Amber. Welcome.
Okay, thank you. Can you guys hear me pretty well?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you. And thank you guys so much for having this discussion. And Kidology, I do, if I'm saying that right, I do appreciate what you're doing. I may not agree on like every single thing, but I do think that there needs to be a more efficient approach, a more effective approach to dealing with incels, because I mean, I feel like I don't care if like they're racist or not. Like, I mean, they out here killing us, right? And they can be black, white, whatever. And I do think it seems that how we are going about dealing with incels is like people are pointing a finger at them, calling them losers, blah, blah, blah. And I just think that that's that is so ineffective and it's not going to help us. So I do appreciate your approach, and I'm sure it takes a lot of courage to do it, because I think that the normal way to deal with men like this is to just to bash them, and it's not helping. It is a societal issue, like at the end of the day. So I do appreciate you sharing your insight on it. And I think that where I really get incensed or really get angry about incels is that there are women out here who are attracted to them. I really believe that there's a woman out here who wants to talk to them, who likes them. They don't want that woman. They want the Stacy. And it's like, you know, so we all want a 10 in our life, Idris Elba, whatever. there was a situation with Lena Dunham some years ago. She was one of the writers. She created the show Girls on HBO.
Yes, yes.
And she, the situation with her and Drake, I think it was Drake. And from what I understand, you can fill me in if I'm like, because it was years ago, but she was talking stuff about Drake. Like, Drake didn't even look at me because, I'm fat or something like that. And I think like the racial aspect really took over that conversation, which it was needed. We needed to talk about that. But it's like, how is it like if you're trying to approach a 10, which at that time would have been Drake, then you gotta be a 10. I mean, and I hate to say it like that, but you gotta be a 10. And so I feel like with incels is that they're not 10s, but they think that they are, they think that like they're obligated to get a 10, whatever, like, that's supposed to be Stacy in our culture or whatever, right? And so it's like, so you killing us because you can't get the 10. Because there are women out here who are going to talk to you, no matter how messed up you are. How many messed up men, women out here do we see with kids? Somebody wants them. But with incels, right? It's like, okay, so Stacy ain't gonna pay no attention to you. Some chick out here is, but you don't want her. And now you want to kill us. You just want to kill anybody because you can't get Stacy. So that gets me turned up.
Exactly. And it's sort of when you actually meet somebody and humanize them, they may move from being like a 3 to being a 10 in your eyes. Like, the guy who I'm attracted to, like in terms of like conventionally, he's like not a 10, but in my eyes, he's like an 11. And I think he's bloody beautiful. And I mean, that's what happens when you actually have to talk to people, have to actually get to know people, have to actually work to form a relationship with someone. So I think, I agree with what you've said.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going on mute.
Yes. Thank you, Amber.
Thank you, Amber. Is that all everyone has for Kidology? Welcome, Themis and Thoth. I see that you have sent your top hat people to do what they do in the chat.
I thought you weren't going to respond to them. You were being petty, ignoring all of them. So I was very much embarrassed. I like your hair, sir. Thank you for...
Period. We pay homage over here.
Hi, Kidology. I don't know
Hello.
if you know me, but I did send you a super chat saying I would like to talk to you. But
Oh, I'm so sorry.
No,
I'm
you're
so
fine.
sorry.
We're like on the back end.
No, you did respond. You said email you. I never did. You did.
Oh, right. Okay.
Anywho, I love what you're doing. I disagree with you on the racism claim. I know that's a lot of what was happening here, but I do actually appreciate your channel. I adore the content that you produce, and I don't have much time, so I just wanted to say that. Thank you, Prince Petti, for hosting this, and thank you to Amber and Oh Boy here for continuing the conversation. But I have to go. I just wanted to say hello.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for dropping in. Kidology, with that being said, do you have any final words? Anything to add?
No, I'd just like to say thank you so much for having me. This has been a very fruitful, a great conversation, far better than I thought it would go. I really enjoyed this and just seeing the chat as well. Thank you everyone for being here, everybody I think I'm just always shocked and overwhelmed that there is so much, I think, acceptance of me on YouTube and online of all places, even though I'm so critical of it. So I thank you so much for just really being willing to try to understand me. I really appreciate that greatly, more than you can imagine. So thank you, everybody, very much. Thank you.
The people want to know where they can support you at, where they can find you, where you reside.
Oh, yes. Well, I have my YouTube channel, just Kidology. I also have links to my other social media to Patreon if you have the means or you want to. Also Kidology, but I would just be happy if you just subscribed or watched, enjoyed some of my videos. Very much appreciative. So yes, that would be perfect if you'd like, of course.
Period. And that's that on that. Thank you for joining.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. Thank you very much.
We didn't get to the poop bucket. Maybe another time.
Yes, we'll talk again, I'm sure. Yes. Thank you. Yes, you too. Bye. Goodbye, everyone. Bye.
Okay, now for the remaining people on screen, I'm going to play my interlude so that we can have a brief after show. Hopefully brief, but the after show will be going on for hours. So, and yay, look at that. So my mods are going to drop her channel in the chat for anybody who wants to go and check her out. The Thoths, she talks about things and stuff just the same way that I talk about stuff and things. Oh yeah, like this is the end. So we're doing an after show. If you'd like to stay and ask anything, you can, but she's gone now. It's just me. You can all go if that's why you were here. It's fine. I understand. Sometimes, sometimes you win some, you lose some.
Oh, no. It's Rennie, by the way. Sorry.
Okay. So I'm going to play my interlude and then we can get into our after show, guys. Thank you, everybody, for watching.
You really want to catch fucking 350 pounds of dude in your ass?
Of course.
Sounds like a good time.
That's a good time to me. He hop on my meaty, he start riding me. I said, Daddy, don't stop it. Look how he drop it. Just like a pilot, I'm all in his cockpit. I lick the cock tip, I let the cock drip.
Shout out to Digbar for those sick beats. I guess we can go in. Well, Katarina, did you have anything since you just joined?
Yeah. There's like a mass.
You're cutting out a little bit. All right. We can get back to our discussion. Oh boy, if you can refresh my memory.
Sure.
Apologies.
I think my point is that like, and I do realize like the irony is not lost on me that it's like a white person saying, "Oh, don't worry if he's racist." I get it, But I do want to make the point that like, do we really not try and like get these people mental health services because of a perceived slight? I mean, not a perceived slight, a slight. Do we really decide that like, oh, what we need to do is hold these people accountable, not say, hey, maybe there's something going on here. Maybe there's some kind of evil afoot, and we should try and extend the hand rather than. I mean, I get that like if the hand gets slapped away, the hand gets slapped away, but these people are in pain first and foremost, and some of them are mentally ill, and some of them are. It's an extremely horrendous. You go ahead.
When it comes to, I just wanted to pause and I'll let you continue. When it comes to mental health specifically, in regards to like doing racisms or being racist, I don't generally believe, and it may be a hot take, I don't generally believe it is mental health issues that cause you to do these things, unless I've seen some people with extreme cases of experiencing extreme mania or like something like that, where they are literally disassociated with reality. Something like that, I think is more understandable, but just going through something mentally or mental illness or like having a tough time in your life, I don't think causes you to lash out racially.
That's not what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is, do we not try to get rid of the evil that is pervading this community, even though a small group of these people were racist? I mean, do we discount these people, put them on blast, and say, okay, now you get to be punished because a small group that unfortunately represents this community right now was racist? Or can we look past that and go, maybe what we need to do instead is try and figure out what is the problem here and try and fix it.
I think
because we're the stronger individuals.
I think we may be missing each other here. My specific disagreement with Kidology is not that because of these examples of incels being racist that she showed that the entire community is racist and needs to be demonized and called racist. It was specifically that she would not call those, she said maybe 10 or so individuals who were referring to her as a monkey, baboon, go back to Africa, N-word with a hard R. She was not willing, and I think still is not willing to call those individuals racist. Or even it seemed even difficult for me to be able to get her to say that that type of action was racist. So as far as demonizing the whole incel community, I have other reasons that I do that outside of racism. I don't know if racism is very widespread in the incel community, but at least for these particular individuals who are very outwardly showing racism towards you, I was concerned with the reluctance of her to call it racism. And several times I even said, like you guys are saying, hey, maybe they're struggling, going through something. Mental illness can play a factor, even though I don't think it makes you racist, and so on and so forth. But I'm not willing to do that at the expense of ignoring the fact that something racist is going on. Like I have just quite literally been called the N-word, and my take was, hey, this is racist, and maybe on my own time I'll think about how he has been going through something or whatever that may have caused him to lash out in this way. But it's not that he's not racist and that this is simply hard times where we live in a society.
It sounds like the point of getting her to say that it was racist is to demonize the community. That sounds like why this battle is being fought in the first place.
No,
is because the whole idea is
not the community. Those specific individuals who called her an N-word with the hard R, a monkey, baboon, and said go back to Africa and such. Specifically, those individuals calling them racist. I conceded on the community point because, well, to be honest, that was never my issue in the first place. But specifically, those individuals.
And so, but then what? You know, then
we can work on it, and then we can talk about how are you guys what's making them do this, and we can look into it as far as research. Even though what I feel I articulated was that I'm comfortable with people who are into research doing that. Like Kidology seems like she's into doing video essays and putting in a lot of work and research and effort into figuring out why these people think the way that they think and what she can do about it. I don't know that I would apply that to the everyday Black person generally.
Sure. I mean,
I'll concede on that. I actually would, want Black people to.
I don't think that if somebody's being racist, that it's anybody's responsibility, or that it's owed to those being racist for somebody to go in and try and figure out why they're being racist. That's not what I'm trying to say. I think that'd be ridiculous. Why are you beating the shit out of me? I don't think, like, that's not what I'm trying to get at. Like, oh, you should. I'm not trying to say, oh, you should be trying to ask this person, why were you being racist? But what I'm afraid of is that this is a position to get into a position of, look, these incels, and they were incels, were being racist. This is clearly an idea. This is clearly shows that racism is widespread throughout the the community, and that's why this community should be canceled. That sounds like that's what the argument sounds like.
Have you been here the whole time? Because I understand maybe you came in. So during the interview, we spoke. I made a very clear distinction, which I didn't feel I had made clear earlier, between the incel community being racist and those specific individuals being racist in the community. And while I personally disagreed on the whole community being racist due to like allowing this to be on their forum and not having it taken down when it's explicit racism or such like that, I disagreed there. I conceded on that point and specifically harped on those individuals. And even in my even in the way I'm articulating it now, I don't feel like I'm saying, hey, that dude, this homeless man called me the N-word, so clearly all homeless people are racist. I don't feel like that's what I've been articulating. I think I've been making a very clear distinction. Now, if you're taking it as a attack on the incel community, I do not know what to say, but I don't feel like that's been my articulation of it. Okay. And maybe this is the articulation that Kidology's audience has made. I see some of them in my chat, and I don't know that they're making that argument in the chat. It's going by too fast, but if that's the chat or her audience, that's the chat or her audience. But I feel like I've been making a pretty clear distinction.
All right. Well, yeah, I think it was a great discussion all around. Thanks for your time. Thanks for letting me come up here.
You're gonna come back, right?
Of course.
Oh, you're gonna hit subscribe, right?
You want me to hit subscribe? I'll hit subscribe.
Well, you don't have to hit subscribe because I asked you to subscribe and you was like,
well, now I'm going to hit subscribe. Now I'm going to do it. Now I'm 100%.
Well, now I feel like you're doing it because I asked. Like,
well, you get a subscriber, so what does it matter?
You're right. I'll take what we can get around here. I did stop to pick up the money after he slapped it out my hand. I'm not that rich.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But I mean, yeah, and rightfully so, probably.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I hope you're.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks for the conversation. Have a good one.
You too. Bye-bye. That was Oh Boy. I think his name is Jacob. But with that being said, thank you everybody who came to watch. I really appreciate you guys. There are 171 people watching right now, so I should definitely have a 171 increase in subscribers once I end this video and go and check. That is what I should see. That's just how I feel about it. But definitely hit subscribe if you guys liked what I said and want to see more. Hit the like button if you haven't already because it's free. And I understand being cheap. I'm a cheap person, but it's free. It's literally free. You can hit like or you can hit dislike. That's fine too. It lets me know that you guys don't like what I'm saying, and then I can pander and grift better. With that being said, thank you guys. And everybody have a good evening. Thank you, Themis and Thoth, for coming by. Thank you, Kidology, for joining us, and thank you to the kiddos, the brethren who came over to show some love, as well as to the top hat people, the Thoths. My bad. Goodbye, everybody, and have a good evening.